Do you like scary movies? If so, you probably enjoyed the 1996 film Scream, and probably at least one of its sequels. Scream was a smart, self-aware slasher about a group of hot young people who knew the genre as well as, if not better, than their audience would. Full of references and allusions to the classics, it's a postmodern love letter to all things horror. Tonight, we're not just talking about one of these movies, we're talking all four. So to do that, the Horror Cult Films podcast have put together a quadrilogy of our own. There's myself, David Smith, and I'm joined by Ross Hughes, Jim Lamming, plus our web mistress, Steph. So come join us on a trip to Woodsboro.
Hello?
Hello.
Who is this?
Tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now he's taken his love of fear
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
one step too far.
So guys, when did you first see this movie? We're going to kick off with you, Ross, since you're the oldest.
Well, thank you. Right, I'm going to tell you something that will shock you all. I think that 1996, my passion for film had come to a sudden halt. That was the year when I'd totally fallen out of watching any film whatsoever. That was the year, of course, of Euro 96, that famous football tournament had arrived in the UK. Even if you were a football fan, you got swept away by it. Skin and Badil and the Lightning Seeds, iconic football anthem.
It's coming home.
Everyone knew it, and it was a glorious, glorious summer as well. I was working away from home with the boys, working nights and drinking on the beach. And because Indian Scream didn't hit America until December, and then did not get released in the UK until May 1997. You're talking a good 15 months of my life where I didn't watch anything, which as you guys know, that is unthinkable considering before then just how much of a horror fan I was. So I missed all the hype of Scream. Did not see any trailers, did not read any reviews. I stopped by an Empire and Total Film. And the first time it came to my attention was when I was in a nightclub. And now this is a true story. Two of my other mates walked in on a Sunday night while the rest of us were by the bar, and they were furious at what just happened to them. So I just asked, what's up, guys? And they said they went to a cinema to watch this film called Scream. And I later found out the exact scene. Where Randy is lying on the couch while watching Halloween, and he is unaware that Ghostface is standing behind him?
It's a classic scene.
It's the perfect life imitating art, because what is happening on the TV screen is happening to Randy. My two mates were watching, and in that moment, the screen went blank. The projector had broken down. Now, unlike those days where you have multi-screens, in the 90s, most small towns had one cinema with two screens. And so when this happened, they basically had their money back and were told to come back the next day. Now, if you look at Scream and the scene in question, the plot was already accelerating, towards its climax. So the frustration on their faces was unbelievable. And I just asked at the time, what is Scream? And the look of aghast on my mate's face, because he's such a film fan, he said 6 words to me. Think of Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
It's fair enough. It's the next logical step.
And an explosion went off in my head, a real light bulb moment. The film geek that was hidden inside me for nearly a year just went crazy because he was aware just how much I loved that Elm Street film. And it's important to mention that film here, as I totally get why everyone puts Scream as the film that started the slasher meta craze, because it is the most popular entry of that period. But for Wes Craven, he started it only in 1994 with that Freddy flick, in which he made quite possibly one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street films of all time. He showed that a boogeyman could be scary again, and he demonstrated the slasher genre was far from dead. I know Kevin Williamson took it to the next level 2 years later, but the stepping stone started right there for this film to develop. Anyway, I went to the cinema the next day, made sure the projector was working, sat unaware of what Scream was all about, and he did that rare thing that I haven't seen since Halloween. It made me appreciate what film can be about. I was excited, I was thrilled, and I was totally, totally blown away. And I spent the rest of the year hibernating, catching up on all the films I lost the last 15 months.
Oh, so it reinvigorated your passion.
It did, because even watching now, as soon as Drew Barrymore picks up that phone, I am back in that cinema as a 20-year-old all over again.
When it first came out, I was 10, so I didn't see it at the cinema. This was, as I always bring up, the joys of having older brothers. Jim, what about yourself? Have you always been a fan of Scream?
Yeah, if I remember rightly, I think I first watched it when I was at school, like literally. I think it must have been end of term, something like that.
Was this the old sort of, let's all watch a video for in RE class?
Wheeling the big telly with the VCR underneath. And one of my friends happened to have the video cassette on him. So I think we watched that in geography. So I obviously back then, still being at school, it went over my head a little bit with a lot of the meta references and stuff like that. And you get to appreciate it over time. But yeah, nothing quite as rose tinted and nostalgic as Ross's story. But yeah, a good place to watch this for the first time. Yeah.
I think I was much the same as you. When I first saw it, I didn't really appreciate that it was functioning as a comedy film as well. I just thought, oh, this is quite a scary horror. But then, I didn't really know anything about these sorts of films. I mean, I was probably 12 when I saw it. I don't think I actually saw it at 10, but at the same time, I was still to really do my kind of journey into the horror genre. And Steph, have you always been a fan of Scream?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm just trying to think when I actually saw it, and it would have been on VHS, probably at the back end of the 90s. I think a lot of my experience watching like Nightmare on Elm Street and slashers, the ones that were like, rated 18, and I was only about like maybe 10 at the time, were normally watched with myself and a couple of my cousins who are about a year or two younger than myself. And our uncle used to go to the video shop for us and come back with a range of horror videos for us to watch on the weekend. And I think it must have been then, I think Nightmare on Elm Street was probably the first slasher that I saw, but Scream would have been round about the similar time. If it came out in 96, then we're probably talking 98, 99 maybe. I can't quite put my finger on it. But no, I loved it then and I really appreciate it and still love it today. Watching it recently for this podcast, it's still on the money for me. Absolutely adore it.
Yeah, see, so this brings you to the first question here. We haven't really exchanged views on this during the week. We've made occasional snide comments about the sequels in our Facebook group, but did you guys love this film as much as you always have? Because I know that we're all big fans here. Jim?
For me, I think a lot of films have diminished it for me. Like, a lot of film references, and it felt very much like I was reading someone's Twitter replies half the time. Because films have obviously copied it, emulated, and tried to do better over the years. And I think the whole film referencing is kind of worn out for me a little bit. It's still a cracking film, don't get me wrong, but there are some elements of it that I find a bit tired in this day and age.
Ross, what about yourself?
Well, the simple truth is that horror fans had grown tired with the same routine of the slash formula. What was a massive genre at the start in the 80s had become tired and old. The market was littered with the same looking films, and it became well known that even the hardened horror fan had enough of ghouls and masks. So for what Scream achieved in 1996 or 1997 when it came out in the UK was just phenomenal. It really exploded the horror genre, and I totally love it. It's up there with Halloween in the importance of the genre itself, because it created such a slasher boom. And exactly just as Steph said, even watching it now, it still holds up as an incredible film. You just got to look at the first 20 minutes of the movie, which we'll probably talk to in a bit. 99% of horror movies you've watched are not as strong as that opening gambit.
Yeah, if I want to cut straight to that here. I actually enjoyed this film more on this viewing than I think I ever have before, right? And I don't know if it's a getting older thing here, but during the entire opening scene, which I think is the standout scene from the entire franchise, I was thinking to myself, this is really, really horrific, because the focus on the parents' pain, the focus on the parents' concern at the end, it brings it to a darker place than most slashers would go here. I think as well, we have an immediate rapport of a character. She's sitting there with some popcorn watching a horror film, as most of the audience were probably doing when they first saw this film. There's just something immediately relatable about it. It really quickly establishes this is a film where the people know that films exist. It's not like the sort of a long line of zombie films have never used the word zombie, despite that would be the immediate point of reference. These are people who love films about killers and are now in one. And I just thought that whole opening, it immediately gave a good mission statement. This is going to be a stalk and slash film. It's going to break the fourth wall, but it's also going to be scary as fuck when it wants to be. Like, there are things that irritate me about the film, I'll be going into them in a wee bit, but I think the opening scene set a tone that the rest of the film pretty much lived up to. You know, it's a really good balance between horror and comedy throughout. Some really tense, well-structured scenes have a real game element to them. You know, the sort of, ooh, where am I kind of vibe. You know, I thought the killer could come out of anywhere.
And I think this is why Scream, the original film, is rated 18. And it's quite bizarre. All the other films are rated 15. Because if you consider Scream 4, which is more brutal and nastier than all the other films, a bit more bloodier, you know, that's still a 15 rating. And I think the reason why it's got such a high age certificate, the original film, is because of the first 20 minutes. That's the only time the entire franchise when it's a full proper horror. All the rest from then on, even from parts 2, 3, 4, I haven't got any of that kind of scene. It's more jokey, more playful, more like a kiddie kind of horror. But the first 20 minutes with Drew Barrymore is absolutely fantastic.
That opening 20 minutes is tragic and it's grisly and violent, really. It's such a gut punch. And like you said, with the parents coming in later on and they can hear her on the phone. Oh, Dad, it's absolutely terrifying and awful. And you just feel for the victim and for her parents all the way through that. And like Ross said, later on, it just becomes jokey, you know, with Ghostface tripping over furniture, and there's comedy elements to it, do you know what I mean? There's nothing funny about that first 20 minutes, not at all. And then you've got the big name, Drew Barrymore, who probably everybody thought was going to be potentially main character, is the one who gets killed off first. But for me, just this movie, watching it, I don't know, it kind of captures the 90s for me, and I'm very like nostalgic for that, and it's just everything that's good about that time. It just brings back a lot of memories, probably because I grew up in the 90s. So the film itself just really still holds up for me, and just sort of does a giant shit all over the more recent ones, to be honest.
Quite right, Steph. I mean, about Drew Barrymore, her face is even on the cover of the DVD and the poster. She was the big name, and for her to be killed off in the first, 15 minutes was such a shock at the time. I can't even remember a horror film ever having that concept. Of course, later on in the 90s, a lot of films copied it. I mean, we had one slasher film with Kylie Minogue being killed off in the first 10 minutes. But if you consider after Casey and her boyfriend get slaughtered, there's no more killings until Teacher Fonzie and that odd scene with Tatum and the garbage kill. It's quite a tame slasher. In regards to what follows after that beginning, it's quite tame. And it's just phenomenal that the first 50 minutes of Scream is regarded as one of the greatest in horror history, and yet after that it's more like a kiddie kind of flick.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Well, it's ostensibly using a lot of the visual language of slasher films. Something that separates this from a lot of slashers is that everybody knows there's a killer on the loose, whereas in the likes of Friday the 13th, people generally only know that Jason exists when they die. And with Scream, they're able to kind of build up a mystery narrative. Now, I think with this movie here, far more than the other ones, with the possible exception of 4, so far more than 2 or 3, I think this functions really well as a mystery. We've got a really likeable cast of characters in this movie. People like, we have Billy, Stu, we have Tatum. These are characters that we still remember years later in a way that if I asked you to name any of the suspects from part 3, you probably couldn't, right?
That's true.
And it's a great cast of actors playing very memorable roles. And I think a large part of this is down to the small town feel of it. We're not off on a movie set somewhere or anything like this. It's just a bunch of kids. And it's not yet lost control of its own lore. Built up the lore of the background quite organically with Cotton Weary. We know it's not Cotton Weary here, but we're able to see this conflict being personalised. The legacy of Sydney's mother's death that hangs over the entire movie, hangs over the entire franchise as it goes on, in fact.
There is a dark undercurrent to the storyline, the mother getting slaughtered, and I just went in blind, as I said. I went to that cinema expecting a Halloween kind of like a Jason zombie. And when I saw the mask design for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. And I think the whodunit as well adds such a great essence to the storyline. That is the fun part of it, trying to guess, especially when you watch Scream for the very first time and you don't know what's coming. I think the later sequels are sort of spoilt by that because you spend most of the time trying to guess who the killers are than actually enjoying the film.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
But with the original, going in first time, you just got swept away by it all. And, it's got such a magic to it. And to be quite honest, they actually put it off wonderfully well as well, who the killers are. They disguise it really well.
It just occurs to me, when I mentioned all the characters there, the one character I missed out was probably the best character, Randy.
Hey.
Oh, yes.
Character that I imagine is there to function as the voice of the audience. Gail as well, actually. What the fuck am I talking about? I miss Gail and Dewey.
Half the cast, though, you've missed out.
Yeah, it's just how good the cast are in the first one. With Dewey, it's great that you can use him to kind of establish a small town feel where people know him by his first name, but at the same time, there's a good vulnerability to the characters because you go, right, the only police officer around is also a complete liability.
But I think it's good as well, there's the first one, like you've mentioned, it spends a lot of time with the characters and we get to know them and the friendships, and rather than it being kill after kill after kill, which it kind of does end up being in the sequels more, you are kind of waiting for Ghostface to appear and do his thing or her thing. But the first one settled into it more and we got to sort of hang out with these kids and find out more about them and their relationships, and it felt more like a natural narrative and it was paced a lot better. And as it kind of, with each new film, it sort of lost that a bit. But I think that's why we remember those characters, because we actually grew fond of them in their own little quirky ways.
Does that rare thing that slasher films can't pull off, that you actually care about the characters. If you actually care about those on screen, then you care then if they die or not. And I think Scream actually done wonderfully to portray that.
Yeah, I really missed Tatum when she was dead. She's got a good energy about her that's been missing for the remainder of the film. If I don't have a point about energy, how fucking good a combination of Billy and Stu as killers. You couldn't have two more dissimilar bad guys here. Billy's just a kind of, he's got that sort of incel vibe about him, saying creepy things like, it's all one great big movie. You're just thinking, twat. But the double red herring thing with him was brilliant, saying, okay, well, he can't do it because he's in jail. Then you see him get stabbed. It sets up that he's suspicious from the get-go, and then kind of dares you to suspect him again later on, kills him, and then goes, ha, surprise, motherfucker, it's him. It's brilliant.
As soon as he asked for the gun, give me the gun, it was in my head, it's him. But then I couldn't fathom how, because we saw him got killed. My brain asked him, I didn't even think about two killers. Honestly, and when all of a sudden Stu turned up, and oh my God, I didn't even think of Stu. I don't know why. And even watching that scene now, it gives me thrills, and it's very rare a film does that for me.
I mean, you're the slasher king, Ross. Had anybody done two killers like that?
They probably have, but I can't remember the moment. So thanks for putting me in the spot, Steph. I'll get back to you now.
But do you know what I mean? There's nothing really that comes to mind on that. So again, I was the same as you, Ross. You just assume it's one person. You don't think there's going to be two people behind it. But yeah, I mean, I love Stu. He's just some giant, lanky goofball. And even to this day, I think I remember watching him in the most recent Twin Peaks series, and he popped up in that. And I was like, oh, it's Stu. And he's, Matthew Lillard's such a great actor. And I think those characters will always be remembered by horror fans. Where, like I said, with the sequels, it's hit and miss.
Jim, you're being very quiet there. Have you got strong thoughts on the characterisation of Scream?
Well, just following on from Steph, I really rate Matthew Lillard as an actor, and he does it so well at really, really making me want to punch him in the face in that film. No one does it better. And yeah, the twist where it turns out there's two killers, that's something that I'll never forget. It's very original. Even to this day, no one else has really done it, have they?
It's certainly not in as big a film as this.
No, definitely not. But yeah, I think the one thing I always remember from the first Scream film, other than that opening, of course, is the reveal, and then Stu and Billy stabbing each other. It was just so bizarre and unreal. And you'd never see anything else like that. It was so different, and it was pretty mind-blowing at the time.
This is something that really fucks me off. They stab each other before stabbing her. You're like, come on, you've got a really good plan here, guys. Just kill her first and her dad, and then do the stab. You don't weaken yourselves, you know? I mean, I guess you go, well, they're psychotic, but at the same time, there's being psychotic, there's just being completely inefficient. I mean, these guys have been quite good killers so far. And then they keep stabbing themselves in the shoulder before trying to kill their last two people. Like, no!
They just deranged. I mean, I didn't put too much perspective into that scene. You know, I just thought these two are absolutely nut jobs, and they gone past the stage of any logic of their plan. Like, do that ad lib by Matthew Lillard when the phone hits him, and he says, "You hit me with my phone, you dick," and that wasn't supposed to be in the script. And my parents gonna be so mad at me. The fact he came out with that and they kept in the film is absolutely fantastic.
There is such an energy to that bit. You can forgive any, slight discrepancies in the plot by that point. So.
But it's like he's proper falling apart anyway, while he's just sort of just sat there dribbling and crying. And you almost feel sorry for him actually forgetting that he's gone around and stabbed a lot of people, I actually felt sorry for him in that moment. But like beforehand, when they're just stabbing each other, you're thinking, Jesus, what is wrong with these people? I know they've obviously gone around killing other people, and that clearly shows us there's something not right with them. But it's the fact that they're actually willing to stab each other and be wounded themselves. You're like, what am I watching here? It's bang on the money. I love it.
Billy stabs Stu very hard at one point. Do we reckon that he would have given a shit if Stu had died?
No, definitely not. No, definitely not. But as what Sydney says to them, you watch too many horror movies, and that just sums up the entire what's happening in that scene. They've just lost the plot, and the fact that for most of the Scream film is the build up to the last half hour. It's such a ride. It is. As soon as we hit that party, and the Ghostface is going to turn up, and you say, "But Tatum," which is a silly killing. I mean, that's the only part of that film which I've never quite liked. Why she thinks she could climb through a cat flap, I never know.
I know. I thought that at the time. Like, surely you don't think you're gonna. But then again, where are you gonna go? Where could she have gone? Yeah,
but to be fair to her, she did come up with the name Ghostface. She's the one that said that word, and it stuck towards the entire franchise. Because up to that moment, we didn't have the name of this man in the white mask. But can we go back to the beginning, because I wanted to ask us earlier, when he was Ghostface was asking the questions to Casey, did any of you get the Friday the 13th question right? Or did you all say Jason?
Yeah, no, I was thinking we're smugly as a kid going, she's fucking wrong, she is.
I sat there so confident, asked Jason, and I was like, what? No.
Oh. I could imagine that, in the heat of the moment, you probably would forget. It's a bit like when you hit the record button for a podcast and you suddenly forget your own name, right? And there's probably an element of that, all right, I'm going to kill you unless you get the killer in Friday the 13th, but you just immediately think Jason and you don't, maybe you would do that in real life. But yeah, I was smugly sitting at home. I'm like one of those people who watches a quiz show, just like, stupid prick. And anytime they get something wrong, I know right wrong.
Well, I think for me, I'd seen Scream before a lot of those other iconic slashes. Prior to that, I hadn't really seen too many. I think I'd seen New Nightmare, maybe one or two, like Halloween, that sort of thing. But no, I hadn't seen any of the Friday the 13th prior to seeing Scream, actually.
We mentioned the cat flap thing a moment ago, and it is a bit silly. But I like that Ghostface takes a beating throughout the series. It's scrappy, it's relatively realistic. If I were trying to kill someone, that's probably what would happen. Vazzy's being chucked around, Ghostface stumbling, Ghostface getting his ass kicked. And when she tries to escape from the cat flap, yeah, you'd like to think that you wouldn't try and do that one yourself, but I imagine it would be a situation of desperate times call for desperate measures. Maybe I can fit through that. It's not my favourite kill of the series, but it was. It's the best kill in the series that involves a garage door. out of the two, it's much better than the one in part 4. All of our responses to death, a bit like Urban Legend, people didn't really give a shit about it, right? like you've got them going, yeah, here's how you kill someone. Really, it's also quite a nice irony to Stu asking why Billy would try and kill his own girlfriend. I say that because Stu, of course, does kill his own girlfriend during the same movie.
Was it Stu? Oh, you must have been Stu. I thought I said Billy was upstairs when he with Sydney. Yeah, I never thought of that actually.
Foreshadowing.
Yes, never thought of that at all.
Making a good porno, clearly. There's little things like that, that your little 10-year-old ears don't really understand at the time, which you benefit from later on.
In terms of another likeable aspect of the film, we have not properly mentioned just how good Courtney Cox in this is. For me, she's the best performer in the franchise. She plays Gail as Gail's obviously an antagonist, not the villain, but the antagonist. But she's a really likeable antagonist, so it's quite rewarding when she goes from that role into repositioning herself as a semi-hero. Really, really good, charismatic screen presence from Courtney Cox, who was obviously a lot nastier than she is in Friends, a lot more cutthroat than she is in Friends. And she had such a good wardrobe as well.
Oh, absolutely. She's a style icon. We love a good sort of like super bitch kind of character, like a really strong woman who can hold her on, and she's just, clearly as a journalist, you have, to get the scoop on everything, and she's such a great character, and that her sort of then relationship with Dewey in it is great because he obviously comes across as a bit young and dumb, but they sort of bounce off each other really well, and I'm just so pleased that those two have come back time after time throughout the series because we're rooting for him, even though she's on the receiving end of Sydney's punches a few times. She means well, even though she might come about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I think with her and Dewey's relationship, something I like about that is it is essentially an odd couple pairing, but it never really feels like that. Both of them feel fleshed out enough that you can buy them as characters rather than types.
Yeah, you can tell they got married in real life because the chemistry between them sparkles, and you can see why they carried on, with later sequels. I do like what Courtney Cox said in real life, that if she wants to show the kids the life of her husband, the father, she just show them the Scream films. Because Scream 1, they started how they met. Scream 2, I think they got engaged. Scream 3, they were married. And Scream 4, they were divorced. The chemistry between them both is just brilliant. And you quite rightly said about Courtney Cox, the fact that she starred in Scream in 1986 when everyone just knew her as Monica from Friends. And to play that role brilliantly. And I like the fact as well she played such an important part towards the end. I mean, they could easily have killed her off, or she could easily have disappeared when her news truck hit the tree. But the fact that she turned up with the gun, and she says, that line, I remember the safety pin this time. You fuck or something like that, it's such a great line. And yeah, I'm glad the ones who survived. I'm glad they turned up in Scream 2, even though you'd think Dewey would have died at the end of that one. Because that guy must have got 15 lives.
He's indestructible, is Dewey.
He's the only guy I know who can walk with a limp in Scream 3, and Scream 4 he walks fine.
Except the opener. I think my favourite horror-y moment in it is probably the way that they bring in the 30-second time delay for the camera when they're filming the party, right? Then you've got that bit where they see Ghostface come in, he's looking at Randy, and he's like, but this is 30 seconds behind. Stab! Great little set piece. Brief, punchy, and quite sort of sadistically funny. But yeah, little moments like that were inspired.
Climax has got a lot of good tension moments. I mean, when Sydney's in the police car and Ghostface has got the keys, and the car doors would open up and down, and then the boot is opening, and that's a fantastic tension-soaked moment. And let's not take it away. This is Wes Craven on the money throughout there with a fantastic script by Kevin Williamson as well. It's like all this elements came together and create this such iconic film.
Jim, do you have any favourite parts of this movie?
As I say, I think my favourite part is the end, as we've already discussed with the revelation and him just going nuts and stabbing himself. I think the whole final act, it's Stu's house, isn't it?
Yeah.
That whole final act is just really, really good. As you say, you've got that brilliant bit of tension and build-up with the 30-second time delay. Although there are a couple of reservations I had with the party in general. Who brings Hellraiser to watch at a party, for a start?
actually don't think Halloween would be great to watch at a party either.
No, I mean, like, you don't really get...
Back to Halloween, but it's slow as
Yeah, but
fuck.
it's got PJ Souls tits in it. That's why they had it, clearly.
Yeah, I guess when you're that age, you do look at things a bit differently, don't you?
Did you not also suggest Return of the Living Dead as one of them? Like, if I were at a party as a teenager, that's the one I'd have wanted to put on.
There's only two people in the world who would bring horror films to a party, and that is Randy and Kirby. Simple as.
It's a shame those two don't get to
Yes. You never know. You never know.
What about any weird little moments in this? I've got a couple of weird little what the fuck moments. Firstly, this is going to sound really picky. You know when the curfew's going, you've got Red Right Hand playing, right? There's just something unintentionally funny about the car goes past, and you've got those people just immediately start packing up their picnic, right? You're thinking, you dumb fuck. If you know the curfew's at that time, then do your picnic earlier. You know? I've been really pissed off putting the sandwiches away because it just turned 6. The little bit where the curfew, heightened security, but yet Ghostface can still go to a supermarket at one point. Like, how did that manage to go into it? You got Ghostface like, woo, behind the trees and the woods and stuff. Because you have to still give him a presence even though nobody's dying.
Well, aren't they all putting signs up in the shop windows and stuff and that saying closed for curfew? I mean, what else are they going to be shut for? If no one else is allowed out, then who's that sign for?
True. Very familiar signs, of course, nowadays, depending upon when people are listening to this. The killer in the toilet. Now, killers in Scream films seem to like toilets quite a lot because this will be a recurring motif. How fucking long would they have had to be standing there between classes, waiting for Sydney to come in to try and do the kill, right? That would have to be Stu, wouldn't it? Because she's just run away from Billy.
Yeah.
So Stu would have to snuck into the toilet, been hovering around, and it's a big school. There's probably multiple sets of toilets, right? It's got to be somewhere going, all right, Sydney's going to have to come in at some point, and I'm going to fucking hover around in my outfit. I mean, maybe he's got in the rucksack, I don't know, but that whole bit, that just struck me as stupid.
Yeah, I thought that, because like you say, she might not have even gone to the toilet that day. I mean, what?
Well, she might have gone and not spoken or made noise.
Yeah, she might have just gone in and out. I mean, why would you be waiting all that time? Yeah, I think that's probably true for any film, though. If you start looking at it, you know, things can be glaring late. Obviously, it wouldn't work out in real life, but, you know, and it is probably, when I was watching it this time round and I thought the same thing, I thought, yeah, how long has he been waiting there? So that probably was a bit of a silly element to it, but then again, Scream's a comedy. Horror, isn't it, at the end of the day? Although that's probably not meant to be it, you know what I mean?
It could have been anyone at that point as well, you know. So who are we to know until later on?
Well said, Jim. If I can believe Brody's widow and Joe's 4 can have a telepathic link with a shark, I can believe that Stu can be sitting in that toilet for 6 hours waiting for Sydney to go and wash her face.
I like to imagine a line forming outside that cubicle. We're like, they've been in there for fucking ages, you know?
Yeah, but he's out in Vindaloo the day before. He's got a really good book he's reading. I mean, it's not like now where he could just be sat on the toilet, you know, looking at Facebook and Twitter all day. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, God, yeah. The days of using cubicles or toilets in general before smartphones, boring as fuck.
Yeah, you just go to the toilet and then finish. Right?
Oh, right on the walls.
On that point, has anyone got any other slightly silly things about the film? Things that were not huge?
It's only that Tate moment for me. I thought it was silly going back all that time ago. But apart from that, the rest of the film is flawless in my opinion. It's definitely a 5-star.
I'm just not a big fan of half the... I mean, a lot of them are just extras and that and bit players, but just the attitude, general attitude of the kids. I don't know how half of these dudes have got friends, you know. They're all fucking arseholes. I might have been like that at that age, but watching it, some of these kids, they're just absolutely repellent.
I know the fact as well that when they find out that the principal, you know, has been gutted and hung from the goalpost, you know, the first thing is like, yeah, let's go and have a look. It's like, you sick fucks, you know what I mean? So these people, not like you said, none of them are decent, are they? Really, there's none except a couple of girls, really, who seem normal.
I think the reason they gotta do that is the thought of teenagers getting killed off is inherently an unfunny thought. So they have to try and make the film kind of like it's got to be sort of gleefully dark comedy at points. You know, you can't have people grieving this film. Otherwise, I think it would just be a bit too bleak with the subject matter.
But also, obviously, played into the hands of the movie with, you know, most of the guests fucked off.
Yeah, you're just left with, you got the main cast there to be picked off. So, yeah, it basically works as clear in the room, doesn't it?
This isn't a thing that niggles me. It's just something that's always stuck with me since the first time I watched it. And that's because we don't really have it in this country, but that popcorn. I associate that popcorn in a pan in that silver foil thing because I think I've only ever seen it once, and that was in more recent years. That weirds me out now. Just seeing that anywhere, it's like, oh shit, Ghostface has got me in the corner because I'm doing fucking popcorn in a pan in this bloody.
Oh god, yeah, that it did not look like an efficient way to make corn. I've never done that before, and it
must be an American thing because I'd never seen it here. Until about maybe 2 years ago.
It's a nice cultural difference. Anyone else got anything we want to bring in here? We haven't really mentioned Fonzie. Winkler is such a... there's a great little scene, you know, where he's going properly rage on the kids, you know, telling them they're being really disrespectful, saying, like, you know, the entire generation's screwed up and stuff like that. I just thought, wow, Fonz is really letting himself go with this one. You know, like, the sort of coolest guy on screen. And it was such a sort of like an angry old man sort of role he was in. I thought that was really good.
He was my first suspect watching. I honestly thought, yep, he's the killer. And
when you see him in his office later, you just goes to show that it's double standards from the man again, because he's stood there in front of the mirror with the mask on, going, you know. So he's being just as disrespectful as anyone else.
What do you think of Wes Craven's cameo as Freddy?
That bit was cool, and then that bit was cool.
Fred the janitor.
Brilliant.
There's a lot of little moments like that littered throughout the film, and we could talk about that for hours. Yeah, Kevin Williams clearly does know his horror films, and as I said, you know, even though they were around at the time, this did really bring the Easter egg culture in, and if all the films have followed since. I think Behind the Mask is a film that's probably copied Scream in that sense. Every scene has got a little Easter egg in it.
Lastly, I just want to say some of the stalk and slash bits I think are among the best of the genre, because where you've got like the bit where Sydney's in her house, you know, and you got the killer calling up, and this before Billy comes in and presumably intentionally drops his mobile phone. Oops, so he can go off to jail. The build up to that was absolutely superb.
Yes, yeah, after the phone call, and I think she fell asleep. That's the first time we knew what her mother as well went on a news report. So they started building up. And then I love the bit that Neve Campbell, as Sydney says, you know, that I don't watch horror films because there was some dumb blonde running up the stairs when she'd be going out to the back door, and she does exactly the same 5 minutes later. It's such a cool sequence of films. But you say at the stalk and slash, it's quite shocking, that there's a lot of snobbery from die-hard slash fans who do not appreciate Scream. Really? Even back when, of course, most of the guys met on the Empire Forum many years ago, there was a lot of slasher fans and horror fans who did not like this film because it was not horror enough for them. It was too comical and too jokey and often compared as a Scooby-Doo episode. And that's genuine, that is, honestly. And even to this day, I've even got friends who are full horror fanatics and they just haven't got no time for Scream whatsoever, which I find quite strange and bizarre.
Yeah, I sort of get the Scooby-Doo angle. I mean, but it's not like when you watch a slasher sequel, you know, if I'm sitting there going, all right, I'm going to watch Friday the 13th Part 3, I'm not going to be scared by it. You know what I mean? I think Scream has better constructed scare scenes than most slashers. It also doesn't take itself as seriously as some of our slashers.
And I think that's the problem. If you compare this to something like Halloween, it's chalk and cheese. And if you're if you love your blood and guts and everything, and you like proper scare fest, then obviously Scream's not going to be the film for you, because obviously Kevin Williamson wrote this and Wes Craven. If Scream came out and it was more of a serious tone, then I don't think it would have done so well, because this was such a breath of fresh air. It done something which the slasher formula hadn't done, even though the meta was in the Nightmare on Elm Street film a couple of years ago, but before that. but this just took it to another level. You know, you had the comedy elements, you had the guess who the killer elements is, you had a fantastic young cast, talented cast. The Jason films were basically, the victims were set up to be slaughter for Jason, but every character in Scream has got a storyline, and that's what makes the film so special.
I think as well, I've just been thinking about Halloween then, and I was going to say something that you'd probably kill me, Ross, so I'm not going to say it. But I think with Scream, you've got, like, you know, the killer is somebody they know. It's somebody, it's, you know, it's from flesh and blood. It's one of their friends, you know, it's someone within their circle. And whereas with Halloween, it is very cut and dry who it is. And it's kind of like Jim Lee Curtis, PJ Souls and the rest, them versus, you know, the shit. Where with Scream, the killer could be in your house and it could be what, you know, it's one of your mates. You just don't know who it is. Or, you know, it's what somebody in the neighbourhood, isn't it? And I think that's what, in many ways, don't kill me, that I feel like Scream is scarier or feels more real for me than, say, for something like Halloween. Don't kill me. I know.
I'm on Steph's side for this. The thought that the person you just had sex with wants to kill you is scarier than the thought that, like, a superhuman person that's just escaped a mental asylum wants to kill you.
Oh, that can be more scarier.
I can agree to disagree on this.
Scream has always been about the fun factor. We all got to agree with that, haven't we? I mean, the main element of movie trick is to give the viewer a game of guess who the killer is, and it does not need to rely on filling the screen full of blood, because it's possibly with suspense and thrills. Now, I would agree and say it's more of a comedy thriller that now and again dips his toes into the pool of horror. So I do understand those who have never found the love. I mean, if you love the extreme old classics like Suspiria and stuff like that, you're not going to take much delight in some kid dressed in a black cape wearing a white mask. I do get that. But Scream is a total different genre to the classics like Halloween. And for you to say this is more scary than Halloween, then I'm absolutely disgusted.
No, but you understand where I'm coming from, just from a human, you know, it's easier to fight someone like Michael Myers. They're completely, in a fashion, disconnected from him. If Sydney's just been shagging a guy, you know, who's her boyfriend, you know, she's in love with, and he could, you know, and he turns out to be the one who's been going around stabbing people, and then obviously her own mother. I mean, it's just nah. The fact that it could be anybody, I think that's what probably gets under my skin a little bit more.
Believe you me, right? Many girls I've disappointed doing sex that wanted to kill me afterwards. Right? So if Michael Myers knocks my door, I'm bloody running the other way.
It gives it inherently more emotional stakes as well. Sydney can feel betrayed in a way that Laurie doesn't, right? I mean, they do try and rectify this with a frankly ridiculous family angle that should never have been a feature of Halloween 2, let alone Halloween's 2 through to 8, and then both of the remakes. But yeah, I'm not saying Scream's a better film than Halloween, but I do think that the conflict is more personalised, and I think for me that gives it a bit more dramatic impact.
Sydney should feel, what did you say? Sydney should feel betrayed?
Yeah, absolutely. She can feel absolutely betrayed here in a way that, like, you know, Laurie isn't going to. She's not going to say, "Oh, Myers, I thought he was a nice guy."
She should feel blinking guilty, because whoever ends up friends with Sydney ends up dead in all the entire films. Flipping it.
Speaking of which, let's move on to meet Sydney's new set of friends. So, Scream 2.
The way I see it, someone's out to make a sequel, so it's our job to observe the rules of the sequel. Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate.
How do we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Well, let's look at the suspects.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
It's him. He can see us.
Do you want to die tonight?
Is that the best you can do? Why not set your goals higher, huh? You want to be one of the big boys? Manson? Bundy? OJ?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Oh, well, now we're leaving Woodsboro and we're going off to college with Scream 2. Steph, what did you think of Scream 2?
Scream 2, well, you know, it's not going to match the height of Scream 1, but bloody hell, what another great opener. You know, this is, again, another opener that I'll always remember, you know, the scene in the theatre with Jada Pinkett. I mean, it's sort of, you know, the watching Gail Weathers movie book that's been adapted for screen, Stab, and everybody's running around in ghost face masks, and I totally did not expect what happened on screen, and it was just pure brilliance. For me, the film, though, whilst it has a strong first half, starts going a bit south on the second, in the latter half of the movie. It kind of loses the quality a bit for me. But as far as sequels go, I have seen a lot worse, and I still rate the Scream 2 quite decently. It's never going to match the first one, but a lot of films don't. Jim, how about you? What do you reckon?
Yeah, as a sequel, it's great. It doesn't quite match the height of the original. I don't think ever would have done, but it's a very good film. I'm quite fond of this one, as I first saw it around the time we first had Sky Movies. So I was watching this one quite a lot. I've probably seen this one the most out of all of them, to be honest. I think the opening's quite good, but I've got to say, if I went to the pictures, opening up the doors to that theatre screen and seeing what was going on in there, I'd be turning the fucker around and asking for my money back, I can assure you.
Oh, God, what a bunch of knobs. I would be like drunk college kids. I would be out of there like that.
Yeah, like, is this like a common thing in American cinemas? I mean, if it was, no wonder Netflix is taking off in the way it is. I couldn't stand for it. And also, it goes for a piss 2 minutes after the film started.
That is true.
You know, if you need to go, you go before, don't you?
Right, here's something, I'm going to be controversial. Introduction, I don't really like this, and I'll tell you the reason I don't like it. Even more so than Stu hanging around the toilet in number 1. The killer here is relying on a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
The killer is relying on a guy called Phil, who's going out with someone called Maureen, to go and take a piss in the cubicle beside him, leaving a very clearly marked seat. He has to rely on Phil putting his ear up to a glory hole to get stabbed, right? Wearing a mask, he can don the mask, go back beside his missus, and then stab her, right? And just like, the names part of this is such a fucking ridiculous thing to add, because it's such an underbaked idea of, we're trying to replicate the first one. Cool concept, barely even enters the script, and we have to put up with this idea that the killer somehow knew which cubicle Phil would be using. He's going for a piss. A lot of people don't even use a cubicle when they piss, right? It was entirely down to circumstances beyond his control that he's even there. Anyway,
David,
irritates the fuck out of me.
Logic just goes out the window with these films. Just leave it now.
And don't forget that their little film studies group, or whatever it was, this one's just as self-aware as before, and in fact possibly sending itself up, because they do actually say sequels suck. So you never know. It could just be dusting over the fact that there are some discrepancies like that, using that as as a fail-safe. But yeah,
this is fair enough. I mean, as you have film studies a bit, I don't think tuition fees should exist, but if I want to convince the public tuition fees are a good thing, I would just show them that as a representation of what college classes consist of. Sorry, excuse my outburst about that toilet scene, but grind my gears.
The hair game definitely improved in the sequel. Gone are all the fringes, and apart from Timothy Oliphant, who just looked like he'd been dragged through a hedge backwards, everyone looked a lot better, that's for sure.
I think there's even a funny mention about, it was Jennifer Aniston, wasn't it, later on with Courtney Cox. I think they were saying like new pictures have gone around of her, and she made a joke. That was Jennifer Aniston's body. But I was just thinking, the reason you said haircuts and I remember Jennifer Aniston is because everybody in the 90s were like going for the Jennifer Aniston haircut, weren't they?
Yeah, well, even Gail's hair in this one was almost a bit too near the knuckle, wasn't it?
I think Dewey says at one moment, doesn't it? Or like your streaks or something.
Yeah.
Ross, are you a fan of Scream 2?
I am flabbergasted in how anyone can find any criticism of this stunning sequel.
Well, we're going to have a fun half hour
Once
here.
Gail Weathers was making a news report at the end of Scream, the magic of the franchise was over. And I don't mean that in any negative way. Once you delivered such a fantastic masterpiece in Scream, any follow-up will struggle to get that same feeling of wow and originality. James Cameron knew this when he took on the Alien sequel, and he brilliantly just added an S to the title and changed the follow-up from a straight horror to an action film masterpiece, which still contained enough elements of horror to keep everyone happy. Now, I will not argue that Scream 2 the better beginning, and Scream obviously has the better ending, but in between Scream 2, it's a staggering achievement, and there are some scenes that probably surpass anything the original has to offer. There is one scene that is probably one of Wes Craven's greatest achievements as a director. So, yeah, I totally disagree with anyone saying Scream 2 is not a proper sequel, because at times this is a much better film. Wow. And I know you're looking at me in thing. I go back to the cinema scene. Yeah, I totally get and totally understand. For Phil to put his ear up against the toilet cubicle and he gets stabbed, it's ridiculous. That's up by with Tatum in the garbage scene. I thought he was stupid then. I think he's stupid now, right? But as soon as he sits next to Maureen, that becomes a fantastic set piece. I mean, you got the events of the now overlapping with the events of the past on the screen. There's a beautiful artistic imagery of Maureen standing in front of the screen while the image of Ghostface is behind her. And there's also a sadness as, well, she's screaming, no one's helping her, they're all looking on like idiots. You know, but once she dies and that Scream 2 caption comes up, well, everyone who loved the original is back on board for what comes next.
Actually, where I'm going to agree with you on that is the bit where the people in the audience start taking their masks off as they realise, oh, this is a real death, this isn't banter. I thought that was a really good bit.
Can't talk what they offered in Drew Barrymore, so they just went, it is a bit dumb, but it is a strong set piece, and it does set up the film perfectly. You got the music, and then you cut then to Sydney, and you know, from that moment you think, oh yeah, I'm back in this world, and it's such a great feeling to have. I cannot see why anyone who loved Scream finds anything to hate about Scream 2.
No, I agree with that. Also, one of the best things about Scream 2 is the character development from those that are coming over from the original as well. Gail and Dewey really shine in this one, you know, even more than in the previous one. And I like the fact that we get Cotton to feature in this as well. The fact that they bring him along and could even be the killer this time is a really neat bit of writing, I reckon.
Yeah, it was good thinking of the way they built him up in the first one. Like, I think he's quite clearly a red herring in this one. Like, I never suspected him at any point. But I did like that we got a payoff for introducing him early on. And he's also got he's a bit of an asshole, but he's got a bit of a righteous cause here too. You know, he did have to go to jail for a year for something crime he didn't commit. And I think that makes him quite an interesting character. It's also interesting that the film explicitly says that it was down to Sydney's testimony, which I think makes Sydney quite an interesting character as well, you know, just because we know that she's been fallible here.
But it's that rare sequel where there's a continuation from the storyline. You don't get that in many sequels. It's usually a fresh cast and, you know, a total new fresh concept, even though you keep the same killer. But how can I say? It's a bit like a soap opera in some ways. You know, you got all this cast. It is, though. You got all this cast back. I think the closest franchise that the Scream reminds me of is the Lethal Weapon franchise, in which you share this journey, which it is in some ways, you share the journey with these characters. You know, by the time you get to Lethal Weapon 4, you know everyone's names and the kids and all that. The same thing happens in Scream. And I just love the fact, you know, once you see Sydney in uni and you see Randy turn up and he pokes his head through and, you know, there's another killing. It's just great to be back, and yeah, honestly, yeah, I carry on. I just love it. I'm just going to sit here while anyone mocks it, and I step in.
No, I haven't really got anything bad to say about this one, other than that scene in the cafeteria. That was excruciating.
Oh, fuck yeah! As if anyone would stand up and start applauding that douchebag.
Yeah, I kind of wanted him to be the killer at that point.
I just wanted to be killed at that point.
I feel sorry for Randy because he's always thinking he's got probably a chance with Sydney, and that goes straight out the window again, doesn't it?
His death did hit me hard.
Oh, I know. That was another sort of probably prominent death scene that out of the movies that is... Because you get, you grow to love Randy and all these sort of remarks about the movies and that, and he's such a likeable character, and it just happens so quickly, and it's so awful, really.
Yeah, like just a few scenes before that, he's sat with Dewey in the cafe discussing, who it could be, what their motives are, and so that was a neat little scene. I quite like that, and then to follow it on with that part in the open area with the mobiles, and he eventually gets dragged into the van. That was a really, really good build-up, and it just goes. I think it was trying to show you that no one was safe, despite the fact that wasn't he the only returning character that does get killed off.
There's two things. The coffee scene I love between Randy, obviously, because it's that Toby spelling gag, which is one of the greatest gags, in any horror. But yeah, the Randy's death really did piss me off at the time. But because, it was Randy, everyone loved Randy. But looking back, I was probably annoyed because I did care for that character, and by killing him off, then Craven and Willison actually got the reaction they wanted. They regretted it later on. Craven did turn around and say, they shouldn't have killed him off. And I think that's why the latest series 3 or 4 struggles. Because I think by the time we get to probably Scream 4 or something, maybe Gale or Dewey should be dead by now. But because there's such a bad reaction from killing Randy off, I think these certain characters are a bit safe, these days, until we get to Scream 5, obviously, which I think one of them will die. But the best thing about Randy's death is it actually happened in the daylight as well. In broad daylight, which is very rare in a slasher film. So that was a big shock as well. I didn't think no one expected him to be dragged in the van behind him. And even then I was thinking he's going to survive.
Yeah, because it's pretty in public, isn't it, really? There's people knocking about, isn't there? I'm just trying to think. The other ones are done a bit more in secluded places, aren't they? And when nobody else around. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, look at Sarah Michelle Gellar earlier. CC, she's alone, and they go with the whole phone shtick again, don't they?
That was the best kill in the film, I reckon.
I think it was very funny, but I remember when I first watched this, I think the only kill of it that I actually did shit myself at the time was when Randy was killed, because you don't expect it, because they're out in the open. So you sat there thinking, well, nothing's going to happen, or they'll go on into some isolated room or whatever. But yeah, to see it happen there, shat it when I first watched it.
I was shocked when Sarah Michelle Gellar died, because obviously she was playing Buffy then, and she was a big name towards fans. But I always remember that scene was that pivotal moment where she's on the phone to Ghostface, and then you see Ghostface behind her. But while she's talking to Ghostface, the Ghostface behind her is holding the phone, and that's the biggest clue in that moment that I thought there's 2 killers. And from that moment on, then it became a guessing game. Then, didn't it? Who could be these 2 killers? Who were these 2 killers?
With the Senior Sarah Michelle Gellar, I think for me that was the most intense kill. I did like the Randy one a lot, though I thought the murder being covered up because there's some guys going past with the boomboxes a little bit too silly. But the Sarah Michelle Gellar one, that was genuinely really tense. So that's a very good spot about, you're right, Ghostface doesn't have the phone in the background there. In fact, here's a bit of the spot. The Mickey who did it, right? They explicitly mention that the kills are filmed. Mickey is carrying a camcorder in all but one scene.
I didn't spot that at all.
I mean, admittedly, this is I think, is a huge problem with the film. Mickey's only in about 4 or 5 scenes, right? He vanishes for the second half of the film. And you're like, all right, well, it's probably him, the guy who's not around when all this happens.
We said in the last podcast when we talked about Urban Legend, is that a slasher, especially in this blueprint, lives or dies by its reveal. I mean, basically, if you have a shit reveal in the film, it'd be instantly forgotten when the credits roll. Scream 2 did achieve this, though, brilliantly. I think everyone sort of figured Mickey may be one of them. I certainly did, long before. He had that look, he had that crazy little eyes, and even from the moment I think about it, it's not going to be Josh Attraction. They've introduced this Mickey. It's not going to be Randy. So Mickey's the killer. But the gasps from everyone in the cinema when Mrs. Loomis walked out holding a gun at Gale, I remember sitting there thinking, yeah, they've nailed it. because I did not spot that whatsoever. I was so taken aback when she stood out towards the end, and I thought, yeah, well played, Kevin Williamson, well played.
Well, we knew she was like some sort of like annoying. I think watching it more recently, a character really stands out because the camera sort of focuses on her quite a lot, and you know there's something going on with her, but what? I think it's possibly a bit more, I mean, I suppose in hindsight, because we know who she is now, but it seems like she's such an important character, but for what she does in the movie as a journalist, as Debbie Salt, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You think there's got to be more than this. It's not. She can't just be there trying to emulate or chase after Gail. There's got to be something more, and I think maybe that's obvious. But just going back to what David said, when Dewey and Gail are in the auditorium watching it on the TV, and then the other movie comes on, footage that they haven't shot. Well, obviously that's tying in with Mickey's film camcorder stuff, isn't it? So, which is not something I kind of put together when I first, was watching it. I've seen a lot more now watching the 4 movies recently than I've done a long time ago.
But back in 1987, this formula of Guess the Killer was still a bit new. I think we still only had the Scream film, and of course Scream 2 probably came out 10 months after. All the other films like Urban Legend were still 2 years away yet. So even though watching these films, the bit where Gail Weathers says to, Mr. Loomis, "You look familiar, do I know you?" I mean, that's a pretty big clue there for the start. But I certainly didn't pick up on it. And even when she, as I said, she stood out, and then Sydney goes, "Mrs. Loomis." And Mickey goes, "Sydney, yes, Billy's mum." It's ripping off Friday 13th. But it's such a good plot. It really is. I mean, yeah, fantastic.
I did like the naturalistic way in which she just goes, "Mrs. Loomis." This is a character in her life, and she's not shared a scene with her yet. And I thought that was just I think I wasn't hugely surprised that Debbie had done it, but I really liked how they, as Steph's saying, how they made her Mrs. Loomis, the way that they tied her doing it into the plot. I think that was a good thing about it. I don't know about you guys, I think a real problem with this film is I thought the characters were a lot less likeable than they were in the first one. I think they're far less distinct, and because we've already got our trio, well, we know none of them are going to have done it.
I think it's a less tense film. It definitely does just feel more like, who is the killer rather than when are they going to strike next. But I didn't find the characters that unlikable. The only one I really didn't like was Timothy Oliphant's character, and he was hardly around really. You'd see him a few times. I know, like Jack O'Connell, we're meant to suspect him. Is it a copycat? Is it a boyfriend doing it again? I mean, they keep throwing in those red herrings, but I didn't find him that annoying. Going back to the first one, the kids in that were way worse.
I mean, I'd rather hang out with these kids. I'd rather watch the first one's kids.
From that point of view, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Derek, boyfriend, it was too nice, I think, is too clean cut, too buff, and a friend who was in that sorority. They didn't really have much character to them. I mean, is that... compared to the ones in the first film, I don't know, they just didn't have much depth to them. They weren't dislikable, they were likeable, but they felt a bit shallow.
Yeah, and 100% agreed. Like, I don't think the actors were worse. And I did really like going, it's the kid from Stand By Me. But at the same time, they didn't leave as much of an impression, so I cared less when they died. And I was less shocked by who it turned out had done it. I sound very negative. There's some bits of this I really enjoyed. There's enjoyable commentary on sequels in general. I love the bit where we think that Dewey's dead, where he's been stabbed, you've got the soundproof glass there. The way that he's using his last bit of strength to alert Gail, that was brilliant.
Oh, that was heart-wrenching, that. A proper upsetting scene, that.
There are 2 scenes in here which is better than Scream. One, which you just mentioned, David, the bulletproof room, which is just fantastic, and Dewey. Because I actually generally thought then, he's dead this time, which obviously you're proven wrong again. But also the climb over in the police car is a sensational set piece. I mean, they could make 10 more of these films and never produce a moment like that. Witness it for the first time in the cinema. everyone was just glued to the screen. You know, people were saying, take the mask off, you know, quick, or get out to the police car. You know, that is one of Wes Craven's greatest achievement as a horror filmmaker. That scene alone is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
I thought that was a really good sequence, but the killer was totally inept during it. And it's weird the way that they somehow managed to sneak behind Sydney up the road. I was like, how the fuck did they get there? But I think it was a good set piece. It's a very set piece heavy film, actually.
But you think of all the places you think it'd be safe, it's a police car. You got two bodyguards, you know, in front of you. They're taken away from the danger. What happened after that? You think, oh my God, no one is safe. No one is safe. He's not safe anywhere. Yeah, you know, if I was Sydney, I wouldn't care if the car on. I would have pulled that mask over. The game would have been, you know, the game would have been over. But it'd be interesting to see who the killer was in that moment. Was it Miss Loomis or was it Mickey?
It was probably the perfect opportunity for it. I mean, I think they have one in every film, don't they, where the killer's there unconscious or whatever. You could quite easily whip the mask off, but they don't. But I think that whole sequence was pretty neat because you've got Sydney being seen off by a boyfriend, and then you see someone running in the background. You think, oh fuck, is he next? And you know, they drive off, and then you see someone moving again, and then it turns out it's all his sorority brothers coming to haze him, basically. It is a bit silly that the killer happened to be at the traffic lights when the police stop, but that whole sequence from then on, I mean, that is proper hold your breath time. With them climbing over, you know, it was terrifying the first time I saw that. It's proper hair on the back of your neck, you know, fucking what you're doing. Just take the mask off and have it done with.
And I don't think we'd ever sort of had a scene like that, had we? Because, you know, up to then it was Ghostface stabbing everybody, and for have a couple of deaths in that way with like, so was it like a piece of scaffolding or something gone through his face?
Yeah, through his face. Yeah.
You know, it's quite a different sort of setup to our normal, you know, death scenes in those films. So I thought it was quite different. It was quite a bit left field that we're expecting, so that was quite good.
They were very fortunate, the killers, because the film relied upon this college, which I felt was a bit of a generic location. It wasn't anything like as well characterised as Woodsboro, but this college, they were lucky, had even shiter security than the college in Urban Legend. Because if someone fires a gun in the lecture theatre, multiple shots fired, and there's no police or anything. Jimmy Blanks, who I'm sure is a dedicated every time listener now, you do not have the worst security on a college in your film.
Well, the fact that Ghostface turns up in the middle of when Sydney's doing a play, you know.
Yeah.
It's a great imagery again. It's a great set piece. I can't fault that. But it is a bit daft as well. They all virtually dressed up like Ghostface, and all of a sudden he appears in the middle of it with the gown on, you know. And it's a nice little touch. But there's daft moments in these films. You just got to know and go with the ride.
I was okay with, in theory, with him bringing the theatre in as a location, because they used this previously with Sydney as a kind of a moment of her sort of trying to find strength, and then the trauma of Ghostface. They're able to do something with that earlier, so it's good that she's back on stage and is able to kill him. The bit where her and Gail do shoot after Mickey springs up like one of those annoying those inflatable men in adverts with these waving arms, and they kick the shit out of him. It's really good, but I felt the last confrontation was just a little bit too camp. Like the whole thing of using the theatre, the sort of cheesy looking scenery, the over the top acting from the killers, this really elaborate soundtrack. None of that worked for me. Her beating the killer by like knocking down the lights on her. I don't know. I thought that felt really, really goofy.
Yeah, it was very Tom and Jerry, but we've already had Scooby-Doo, so why not?
Yeah, that's where it kind of, like I said, the latter half of the film, or really maybe the last third, just sort of fell apart a bit for me. It did go a bit daft.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff on that stage was probably styrofoam. I mean, those bricks landing on it wouldn't have made a scratch. But I've no issues with that finale. I think it's elaborate and silly, just like the rest of the film, really.
Jamie, you're my favourite friend today. I actually forgive you for the final girls, which our listeners will hear about in another podcast another time. I think the last 25 minutes is absolutely brilliant. Again, it builds up its momentum. You know where we lead, and after watching Scream, the reveals are there. I got no issues whatsoever where the finals, fight on the stage set in. I think Miss Loomis and Sydney facing off each other was a great moment. And of course, Cotton Weary gets to become a hero and completes a story arc, which, I loved it.
I don't know if any of you guys know about the production. I understand that this film was still being written as it was being shot, right? Because it was for a leak at one point.
They said that at the beginning, but later on, I think in 2013, Kevin Williams denied it, and he said that they'd done a lot of dummy scripts, and the one that was leaked were in the final the version we saw. They've done the same now with Scream 5. They've actually filmed multiple scenes and multiple endings. So if anything gets leaked, there's a very, very good chance we're not going to know about it.
Has anyone else got anything else you want to add about Scream 2?
It was nice to see David Warner appear in it as Sydney's teacher or theatre producer guy.
He was my second suspect.
Really?
At first, when I first watched the cinema, thinking, David Warner's there, of course, who played the original Freddy Krueger. That was a bit of a horror thing there then. Obviously, I was well off there I didn't guess who the second killer was, but David Warner was my first suspect alongside Mickey.
By the sounds of it, you've just got trust issues with teachers, I think.
Well, I am from Wales.
I didn't suspect David Warner. I know he's been in The Omen and so on, but I was like, he's also in Star Trek. I don't buy him as a killer. But one last thing, which is also true about the first one. Wes Craven, horror master, really shit at choosing songs. Now, I liked Red Right Hand appearing, but the songs he has over the credits are really, really bad. I don't know what he's thinking.
They're just of their era, I think, aren't they? Just very much of that time. I mean, if this series has got anything consistent, it's that the songs they're using are very much of that time they were made. Because I wouldn't listen to them today, I can tell you that.
He even uses Creed in the next one, Scream 3.
Just one question. Do you think it's over, Sydney? Do you?
Is now taking credit for Maureen Prescott's murder.
But we know who killed Maureen Prescott. Billy Loomis and Stu Marker. I mean, they even told Sydney how they did it.
Maybe there is a third killer.
Guys, this was about Cotton. We are not in any danger.
We are not in any danger, says Candy, page 15.
Who the fuck is this?
Somebody who killed to know where Sidney Prescott is.
Well, we've reached what's probably the most controversial, and by controversial I mean rubbish, entry in the franchise. Jim, what did you think of Scream 3?
Not a great deal, to be fair. Well, nothing positive anyway. Obviously, it's the one I've seen the least out of all of them. It's just not very good overall. Terrible writing. I absolutely hate the character development in this one. It ended so well for Sydney, Dale, and Dewey. Even Cotton, who is oft in the opening in this one. Got to say, I do like the name of his TV show. That's quite funny. 100% Cotton.
I'd watch that.
That was amusing. It was pretty
Would
neat.
a murder suspect really have that? I can't imagine. I can't think of many murder suspects. I can tell you what.
Clearly, Diane Sawyer has that effect. You can have your own TV show after that.
To be fair, he was. This is probably the better bit of character development, because in Scream 2, he was after his 15 minutes of fame, wasn't he? He wanted his interview with Sydney to clear his name on the TV, and then obviously he's taken the ball and ran with it here. So he's got his own chat show, which given the era it is, you wouldn't put it past them. They were huge back then, because I know the wife watched plenty of them, that's for sure. yeah, that's probably the one positive I've got for that is that opening. But the characters, especially Gail and Dewey, I felt were really detrimental to how we left them off in the previous film. It just feels like they just ripped up and started again with them, basically. And yeah, it's just lots of little touches. I mean, you mentioned it with the second one, but this one it is widely known that there were script issues even when it was shooting. But yeah, it's just not very good.
So I understand they replaced Kevin Williamson as it went on, or they got rid of, they changed the script?
No,
right?
Kevin Williamson left because he was going to film his own Teacher Miss Tingle, and they took on Ewan Kruger because obviously the massive success of Arlington Road, which contains, a fantastic last 15 minutes. So you can tell that the film badly misses Williamson.
Russell, were you a fan of Scream 3 at all?
Right. It was the start of the new millennium, so a film came out that made all horror fans spit in rage. It had a rush story with no thought or substance, a sequel that every single fan honestly doesn't want to exist or believe it's around. But I'm not talking about Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. I'm talking about Scream 3. Oh, man, this film. This is the only one. Start again. The scariest thing about this film is Courtney Cox's haircut, all right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? But this is the only one where right from the off, it just feels wrong. I mean, the tone of it. I hate the fact they kill off Cotton Weavy. I think it was a massive misstep. I don't understand why they done it. This is a character who survived being framed, then becoming a hero in Scream 2, and then just be killed off right away as a cheap gimmick. Just left a bitter aftertaste for me, even before the credit roll. I absolutely hate the introduction of the voice changer. It's such an awful gimmick that I half expected Ethan Hunt to be revealed as the killer, because we're going towards Mission Impossible territory. I just don't like this film at all.
That voice changer is fucking dire. It worked in the first scene. I thought, yeah, that's quite funny. But the fact they took the ball and ran with it. I mean, as you mentioned, Mission Impossible. Was it the second one where it felt like every 5 minutes they were taking off the face?
Yes. The biggest problem I got with this film is it feels as if no one wants to star in it. I mean, you've got Campbell herself. She was contracted to only appear for 20 days.
She's barely in the first
exactly,
half.
And that's the reason why they only had 20 days. They only had it for 20 days. She feels as if she can't be bothered in it, and that goes with all of them. I just wish I can understand the real life tragedy affected this film, and this is why the studio opted for a more comedy tone than horror. But why didn't they just put the brakes in it?
If anyone's wondering that real life tragedy was out of a Columbine shooting, right?
Yes,
it's like Blanks was saying in our interview with him, where in the wake of Columbine, people didn't want to have young people getting killed on screen. In fact, I saw behind the scenes, apparently, there was actually a suggestion that there's no kills in this, and Wes Craven had to step in and go, look, the audience in Scream expects kills. We're not doing Scream without kills.
But you can see, I mean, the background, as you said, the studio insisted on a comedy tone, and you do feel Craven and Kruger had an impossible job, especially when you hear since the possibilities of what the third film could have been about. I mean, Matthew Lillard was approached to return as Stu at one point. He would have been revealed as the main villain behind the scenes from his jail cell. Also, Kevin Williamson admitted in 2013 his original script would have seen the killers be a stab fan club of Woodsboro kids. All the members of the club would have been involved in the killings, and the final twist of the movie was when Sidney walked into the house after Ghostface had killed everyone, and they all rose up. None of them were actually dead, and they planned the whole thing. So it's a kind of a rip-off of a April Fool's Day movie, which would have been quite cool. But even those two concepts, with Stu coming back and the kids doing it, is a hell of a lot better than what we got in this film. This is a weak, silly... This is the only film where I agree with the Slasher Brigade, where it's more like a Scooby-Doo film, because it's so tame, and it's the one I could actually not watch again.
I was sitting there raging, going, a car explosion in a slasher. Steph, what did you recommend? Steph, what did you make of Scream 3?
I'm just infuriated that you made me watch it again, to be honest. It's like, oh, guys, we're going to do a podcast on the Scream movies. I'm like, yeah, 1 and 2. And they're like, no, all 4. I'm like, fuck's sake. Yeah, it's dire. Like Ross has mentioned and yourselves, it does feel like Courtney Cox, David Arquette, and Ivy Campbell have just come back because they've had to. There's nothing really, I don't think there's anything good you can say about it. And oh my God, the most annoying character of all. And we're not talking the actress who plays Courtney.
Parker Posey.
Yeah, Parker Posey, yeah. I'm not talking her. I'm talking about the bloody killer. Bloody Sydney's half-brother or whatever the friggin' hell he is. It's, whiny little shit. Someone should just put a bullet in his head at the beginning of the film and then we didn't have to bloody watch it. I don't think there's anything good about this movie. And
I completely agree.
You know what's potentially nearly as bad as, what's his bloody name? Roman, yeah. Is Ghost Maureen.
Fuck yeah!
For fuck's sake, that bloody
dream
house
sequences.
That is the one scene that sums up the change of concept. I mean, a Scream movie should never have an ill-judged dream sequence. It felt like a J horror moment, which does not belong. And I totally agree with you there. That for me, if we didn't have a follow-up to this that was so good, then Scream 3, that was the moment where the franchise would have jumped the shark.
I reckon as far as this one goes, I'd agree with all the criticism you guys are saying here. Like, there are some things I quite like about this, and there's not many of them. I thought the opening scene was okay because slasher films really don't lend themselves to recurring protagonists. We have to believe that anyone can die. It's Wes Craven himself, actually, who said audiences have to fear the director. And by this point, we don't think any of the 3 leads is going to die. And we'll come to this again when we're talking about Scream 4. But, basically the more films you get, the less tension you get. And with Cotton Weary, he'd been with the films since the first. They could kill him and it still feels like it matters. I also thought the voice changer, whilst completely silly, it added a layer of a kind of a new aspect to it. Like, I was okay with it in concept, just because it meant that, you can't even trust the person you're speaking to, right? You have to physically be in a room with them to know it's them, and the whole film relies upon people getting calls and showing up places. So I thought that was a good idea, but I don't think it was done well. I think it was very little tension to the film at all.
Oh, I can't be found any positivity about Scream 3. The voice gimmick lost it for me. I don't understand why you need a voice gimmick when you've got the fantastic vocals of Ghostface himself. It's a silly moment. There are some good moments. It's not all doom and gloom. There's a great Star Wars gag, with Carrie Fisher. That was brilliant. And probably it has got one of my favourite scenes in the franchise, and it's the moment where Sydney is on the film set, sitting on what's supposed to be an old bedroom, and you got the voiceover of Billy Loomis. I've always liked that. I liked it at the beginning, and when I watched it this week again, I'm thinking, yeah, that's a quite a cool moment. Maybe because it reminds you of the glory days. I don't know. But there's nothing of note. As soon as that knife flies through the air and it's Dewey on the forehead without killing him, I realise that this franchise is borderline becoming ridiculous. And that's a shame to say because the first 2 were really good. It's the Alien 3 of the Scream films. No, I'm sorry, it's the Alien Resurrection of the Scream films.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. Sorry, Jim, I apologise.
I think the movie plot thing is an okay idea of you can have fun seeing here's Dewey dating the actor who plays Gale. Here's other people playing the same roles, and you've got a funny version of the movie versions of them in the movie. It's an okay idea, and the movie set bit's very cool, but it also makes it completely unrelatable. You're leaving small town paranoia to come to this thing of a large mansion where a bunch of movie stars are hanging around. It's totally unfamiliar to the audience and just feels like Hollywood navel gazing the entire time. Yeah. And also, With Roman, Steph was totally right that he was whiny. He's whiny and uncharismatic. His motive is so stupid as well. Of the grounds, in fact, he's trying to I want to have your life or whatever. He's much more successful than Sydney.
Yeah, that pissed me off. Like his motivation was shit. He was an absolutely snivelling little sod with no redeeming features. How can you have any sympathy towards him? And like, other than him telling Sydney what his motivation is, why do we need to believe him for a start? And why is he throwing away this absolutely incredible career he's got, ruining it for himself in the process, over something that, he just thinks happened rather than is, factual evidence? That sort of, I mean, obviously it's a slasher, we're meant to believe that, but yeah, that whole motivation and everything at the end just is what the fuck.
What year did this come out? This is 2000,
yes.
2000, right. In this era, following the kind of the Me Too revelations, following the revelations about Harvey Weinstein in particular here, this film takes on a new meaning. Because it frequently talks about sexual exploitation in Hollywood. Now, sometimes it does it in a flippant way, like Carrie Fisher, saying the person who shagged George Lucas ended up getting the role, obviously referring to herself. But multiple characters in this refer to situations where they've had to sleep with someone to get a role, right? We know that Milton just talking about, this just happened, but it was a different era, it was a different time, an excuse that, people have made in real life as well. I think one of the problems with this, though, is that the sexual assault plot is totally out of sync with the Scooby-Doo tone of the film.
Yeah. It does feel like it's kind of come from nowhere as well. I mean, because obviously they spend a lot of time doing that sort of background research into finding out where these photographs have come from, and obviously finding out about Maureen's previous role as an actress. And they spent a lot of time sort of building that up, and then the sort of the element with Roman and that, it just kind of all got shoved under the carpet a bit, and it's a bit weird because it takes it brings like a really dark aspect to it. I know the previous movies obviously have had Maureen Prescott, dying, and then they've accused her of sleeping around and things like that. But I didn't like the fact that they kept bringing it back to Sydney's mum, and I know obviously they've linked it with things with Roman and his relationship with her and being family and that, but I don't know. I just didn't find that whole storyline fitting of the series. It just felt weird.
Yeah, a lot of it seemed to be little off the cuff throwaway gags as well. Who was it that was playing Sydney in the film? Was it
Emily Mortimer's?
Emily Mortimer's character? Yeah. She said she had to sleep with, was it Milton to get the part?
Yeah.
And that was delivered as like a joke, wasn't it? So, it just seemed a lot of that side of it was just done as little gags more than anything.
It was far too stupid to be saying anything profound. I mean, it's interesting that Harvey Weinstein was, of course, a producer of this film.
Jesus.
And it makes me wonder what Kevin Williamson knew when he was writing it.
Yeah, as I say, it makes it look like it's commonplace and standard even at this point.
Well, so basically they wanted Scream 3 not to be blood and guts because he didn't want to offend anyone, but 19 years later, it's relevant. It becomes a true life story.
I think there's a lot of okay in-jokes with, some of the humour does land, but it's like we've got no control over the actual plot, Like, a lot of it just feels like a series of little sketches or bits. And while we do have this kind of mystery element, because you've got 3 recurring characters, and then you have, what's-her-face, the one who's playing Gail in the film.
Parker Posey.
Yes, her Parker Posey, right? So you've got 4 detectives in this film. Because they're like, Gail, that'll be funny, which it is at first. But you've got 4 detectives in this film, and the suspects, the very, very few suspects we have, they're so nondescript. They mostly get 1 or 2 scenes each. It's not like the first few ingratiating the group.
I think everyone knew that Kincaid, Patrick Dempsey, were going to be the killer. And I think he's totally right with there, David, because there was actually no really guessing game to fool everyone. They had to actually kill the killer off as a fake death, But even then, it's still not much suspects after that. And when Ronan turned up towards the end, took the mask off, surprise. I weren't even surprised at all, I got to be honest though. And if you got to introduce a long lost brother into a franchise, then you begin to realise that the ideas are really running short. And the one thing I don't like about this film is it totally nearly ruins the original film.
Yeah.
Because he actually implies that he sets Billy and Stu up, onto the path of killing. And any sequel that does that starts mixing with the original, I get a total instant dislike to it. So when Sidney says towards the end, enough of this shit already, I've heard it all before, I think most viewers will be thinking the same.
Yeah, it felt like he did a giant shit on the original. And it's like,
yes.
no, Billy and Stu did it, you fucker. It was their idea. I can't believe I'm actually sticking up for him. But, it was kind of like Roman just waltzes in at the last minute and takes credit for something that we've held dear since the first one in a way. That sounds really weird. But you know what I mean, though, don't you?
I'm totally with you. It's been an emotional journey for Sid here. She had to deal with the fact that her boyfriend killed her mum, right? She had to deal with the fact that her boyfriend was trying to kill her. Then it's like, oh no, but all this happened because of Roman, who you haven't seen up until the third movie. And unlike Ross, I was surprised when I found out that Roman did it, right? But the reason I was surprised was I was like, really? Him? It wasn't a good surprise. It wasn't, fuck him. It was like, him.
It's because we didn't see him die. When she lifted up the coffin, it was the coffin, and he was dead. I think, we didn't see him die. Oh, he's the killer. So he must be a second killer. I was a bit fooled. Yeah.
Yeah, they're also in a room full of movie props. I mean, it was pretty telling, wasn't it? But yeah, the fact that they shoehorned Jamie Kennedy's cameo in there, basically it's the exposition moment where he's just okaying all the shit things that are happening. This is gonna be the rug pull, and things that from the first film are going to be totally turned on its head. I mean, well, literally, they do have a rug pull moment in it, don't they? In that stupid Scooby-Doo mansion.
Oh, that mansion. At one point of the mansion, is how bad the tension is here. There's one killer in the mansion with 5 people who know there's a killer, and 3 of them are the regular cast. There's nothing about this situation that was scary.
Yeah, and the fact that they give the killer any quarter as well, by this point, you're going to, they've been through it enough. And we've seen that it's not very steady on his feet, runs into the walls, into doors and stuff like that. Then yet they still back off and give him space. And one of them's like a trained policeman as well. You'd at least think he'd have some sort of physicality about him, especially when they're scrapping at the end. But yeah, just that whole last part just absolutely sucked. Although I did actually laugh at the bit where Dewey gets hit in the head with the handle end of the knife. I did think that was quite funny.
Yeah, I laughed at that. But I think as well, Roman scenes, he didn't have that many in the film, if memory serves.
Thank God.
I know.
No, he's only 2 or 3.
How pissed off would you have been, though, if Mrs. Loomis and Mickey actually killed Sidney? What would you have done after that? Would you would Scream 3 be him hunting down Mickey and Miss Loomis?
Oh no, I'd like to think he put them up to it as well.
Oh no.
He's been puppet master.
He must have been on vacation when they started killing them. The fact that I'll give it a year off, I'll come back, in a couple of years' time and do it again. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
We know how difficult it is to get anywhere in the film industry. So for this specific guy with this specific set of motives, to get the director's job for Stab 3, which is a shit name for a film series, by the way, is unbelievably convenient. Just absolutely unreal how everything falls into place for this guy. This guy has probably got the luckiest life going, but he's a bit jealous because he didn't have a mum.
Yeah. It seems even sillier after her interview with Justin McConnell a few weeks back, When you go, this guy has landed on his fucking feet, gets to make a movie about the killing of his own mum, and uses a script to lure in his mystery sister. Like, just imagine like if a slightly better director had applied for that. He goes, "Oh shit, my master plan." Because how else was he going to get from there?
He'd probably wait to Scream 4.
Did you guys like the Randy scene?
No, definitely didn't. Again, all of a sudden he had a sister that came out, and when would Randy film that? Why would someone film something so idiotic than that? Oh, by the way, you're watching this if I'm dead. Oh, come on. If you're going to bring Randy back like that, why kill him off in the second one?
Well, I think I read that this was like a last-minute decision, and I think it was, it's telling that they're papering over the cracks with this little scene here. But, I mean, to be fair, it is very in keeping with his character from the previous films. I mean, you can't deny that, but it is stupid. It's ridiculous. But, it was nice to have him back for a minute. So.
Something that I was wondering from it was the sort of horror trilogies he's speaking about. What films could he have been referring to? Because the two examples he gives, he says, is rare, and then brings up Return of the Jedi and The Godfather 3, right? I was like, these aren't horror films, mate. So, like, are there any horror trilogies that are just trilogies or were just trilogies, which also managed to do the sort of all the stuff he's talking about of bringing back something from the first film to then make it go, ooh, I see the whole thing differently now? Because I really struggled. I couldn't think of any which met the criteria he talks about.
No, there's nothing that springs to mind in terms of horror. Anyway, thinking about a lot of film, I think any with a trilogy tend to get a few more after that. But even so, they don't tend to deviate from the formula too much.
They also don't really tend to emphasise continuity. I mean, Scream is actually relatively unique in the amount of continuity it's given, or at least for the time it would have been.
Well, yeah, as Ross mentioned earlier, it's not very often you would get a horror sequel where the characters from the original are still the main characters.
Yeah, I mean, would you normally be dead?
Yeah.
I was just impressed that Sydney was still wearing Derek's necklace from Scream 2.
Yeah, I noticed that bit. That was a neat little touch.
For record, I thought it was an okay inclusion. It was like an oasis in the barren desert. But they've got the bit in the video where he says that the killer this time will be almost superhuman. It's a bulletproof vest.
Yeah, yeah. I did see Dewey get a few shots off when they jumped. Was it jumping over the balcony when the house blew up? Which was a stupid bit. Fucking getting the death threats by fax machine.
You know what? Actually, that was, for me, that's the only bit I can remember, and I think that's the only bit that tickled me about that film, because everything else was just dire.
You know what, Dewey, he's the one with superhuman strength. Never mind the killer.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an absolute ass kick.
And incredible healing abilities as well. Where it's fallen into it, where he's magically healed like Jesus.
The aim for the face bit was quite funny, but I didn't like that they personalised the conflict this much. Like the Star Wars films, the Scream ones don't really move on from the first one, really. It's all about repercussions to that. But it's not Sid who gets the kill shot.
I never noticed that, I've got to be honest with you. I think I'd fallen asleep by then.
Yeah, funny you should say that. I think prior to watching it for this podcast, the last time I did watch it, I did fall asleep in the middle and I had to watch the rest of it the next time. At
the end of the day, the best thing for Scream 3 on its own is that if you're going to watch all these films, you're going to end up watching it now. If you decide one night, I haven't seen the Scream franchise for a long time, you're going to watch Scream 1, you're going to watch Scream 2, you're going to end up watching Scream 3 just to get to Scream 4. So it's going to play a pivotal part in the franchise, till the end of time, even, despite how lacking it is.
Or you can just watch the first and second.
Yeah. I'm like Ross. I've got to watch. If I'm going to watch the series, I've got to watch all of them.
But don't forget, by the time 2000 came out, though, Scream 3 came out in 2000, the slasher genre was on his legs again. After Scream came out in 1996, we had 4 years of this massive little boom And by the time Scream 3 came out, the fans were very tired of it. And I think I said in the last podcast, horror was going into a new, different direction then. We had Jigsaw come in, we had Hostel come in, gore porn was all set. And I think year 2000s when J-horror started to come into action. Yeah. So by 2000s, the slash genre was virtually dead and buried.
Well, regardless of it running out of steam, it doesn't justify the fact that it's a badly written film. For me, the majority of it felt like a fucking soap opera. They're hanging around with the Hollywood actors and everything's really melodramatic.
But this is where I got to stick up for Wes Craven. See, it's the studio should have turned around and said, "No, we wait." This terrible thing happened in real life. Let's put pause on it. We release it we make it in 2 or 3 years. But to put pressure on Wes Craven, who already had lost Kevin Williamson because he had walked away to do his own film, which was an absolute flop and a terrible movie. Wes Craven he was on a hiding to nothing, and I got to protect him. I got to stick up for the man here because, to be fair, I think even he knew deep down that this was a very, very weak film. And I'm glad the franchise didn't end then, because if that was the final entry, then what a shame.
Ross, I just thought of a parallel that I think you might appreciate here, right? I think Scream 3 is the be here now of horror movies, right? The reason being, so definitely maybe kick-started Britpop. It was one of the big founding albums from that era. What's a Story More Than Glory? Not as good as Definitely Maybe, but still very good in its own right. Then this one comes along as the very brief movement is coming to an end and then kind of shits all over it, right? This is the end of the revival of Scream 3. Like Britpop ends with the sound of the door closing in Be Here Now. The slasher revival ends with the door staying open in Scream 3. It's a small but very intense era of movies that's, as you say, running out of gas, and then the biggest one just turns a bit rubbish.
Yeah. I don't know anyone who likes Scream 3. Do you know anyone? Any friends have you got who would say to you, "Oh, Scream 3 is underrated"?
I've never met anyone that properly likes this film. In fact, actually, one of the things I will say that I just touched upon that is okay about it is I liked seeing Sydney as a counsellor. I thought that was a logical way for her character to go. I liked that she was using her trauma but helping people.
Oh, that was a nice little touch.
Gail and Dewey's relationship became boring this time. We've already done their sort of, they're so different. We've done that for 2 films. Can't we just even be happy this time? But that door staying open at the end, I was okay with that. I thought it was all right. It's like saying, yeah, there's still danger out there, but she's not closing her doors any longer. She's okay. She's willing to take it on.
That Scream 3 is the only film as well I didn't have Ghostface flash towards the end when the credits go up. That's because that was the biggest clue that he's still out there. So when the credits go up, there's no sign of Ghostface. That meant it was closure. But by leaving that door open towards the end, it's a little hint that there was a chance the franchise could come back in some stage, which we all knew it would one day. We didn't think it'll take 11 years, but we haven't Scream 5 on the corner even after this one. It's like they say in the next 2 Halloween films is going to be the last ever Halloween films. They not. You know damn well in 6 years there's going to be another Halloween film, different director, different story to tell, because these are like iconic characters in the horror genre.
Before we finish up by going to Scream 4, final thing for this movie. What the fuck is that Jay and Silent Bob cameo?
I was just thinking that. I was just going to mention that. Do you think it's one for me, one for you with the directors? Because obviously Wes Craven had a cameo in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where they're making Scream 4, I think. And it turns out the killer's an orangutan in this one. So I assume it's just a returning the favour sort of thing. They're probably both making them at the same time.
I liked it. It's only bit it made me laugh. I sort of want this Silent Bob to be the killer. What's your motive? Silence.
To be fair, in some ways that would be better. A famous, successful director going, I'm just jealous of her.
Jealous of what? All her friends have been murdered. You've lost 2 boyfriends,
She's, as they say in Scream 4, she's a professional victim, I believe, for her. Or celebrity victim,
Victim.
Yes. Speaking of the 4th one, let's go to that.
What do you want?
Who is this?
He's trying to do Ghostface.
I'm standing in the closet.
patterning his murders.
Ooh, Scream 4. I think we're all going to have better things to say about this one. Right, Ross?
Oh, definitely. Scream 4, I think it was way, way ahead of its time. If it was released now, it would be better appreciated. 2011 was a weird year in horror. Found footage was really in the groove. We were already on a Paranormal Activity third film. Twilight was as close as we had to any successful vampire tale on the big screen. And of course, the market was flooded with remakes like Fright Night and The Thing. And they weren't even box office successes. So Scream 4 was an odd release that year. There wasn't a huge demand for it. Perhaps fans like myself and all of us were more excited than others. So I'm not surprised that it did not set the world alight. But I'm glad on each passing year it finds more and more love and fans, because it really is an underrated slasher. This is basically more nastier, more bloodier. In fact, this is a film that will probably appeal more to slasher fans who didn't like the first two films. It contains the same essence of what made Scream 1 and 2 popular, but also being a bit more bloody. And I mean, at the same time, like Kirby, she's such a fucking wonderful addition. She's probably my favourite character in the entire franchise. But yeah, I absolutely love Scream 4. And anyone's got a bad word about this, then bring it on.
Okay, that's laying down a challenge. Steph, I got the feeling that you did not like Scream 4.
No, it's better than 3. Let's put it that way. It's not bad. It's not a bad movie, but I can't say I enjoyed it really. I'll agree that Kirby is the best character, because none of the rest actually have a character. So the kills for me were just over with quickly with people we didn't really get to know. The more gruesome, which I understand is playing into that sort of part of the plot, which obviously with the same like with remakes and that, you get gory, especially when we've gone through the era of torture porn as well. Like with the death of the friend next door, and she's actually gutted with her intestines out, and we see a bit of that. That's something we didn't really see in previous films so much or anything like that. But it's just mindless violence of the youth of today. I don't... It didn't have the same appeal as the previous first and second movies. It just didn't do anything for me. And that recording constantly, that I forget his bloody name, with his like hall pass, whatever he's fucking called, with his live streaming to his blog. It just didn't, and Charlie and the different characters, it just didn't have anything about them. And oh my God, Sydney's cousin, she just shit. I just couldn't get to it. I just didn't get it at all. But Kirby was a good character. I didn't mind the opening though. That was a bit interesting. Very Inception-y, very film within a film within a film. I'm like, bloody hell, when are we actually going to get to whatever's real life? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I thought that was one of those bits which is a good idea, but if you really ran the gag into the ground, it's like 50 minutes later and it's still there.
Yeah, it was interesting, like I said, and then it just kind of went, right, we get it now. But I can't really... Other than sort of like having the characters back, because I remember at the time seeing the posters on all the billboards and the bus stop advertisements on the side, and I'm as giddy as anybody else. And I'm giddy for the next one, do you know what I mean? Even if, Scream 3 was shit, I was still excited about Scream 4. And even if, like I said, Scream 4 wasn't really to my taste, I'm still giddy for Scream 5. It doesn't matter. They could make another shit one. I'd still be excited for Scream 6. It's good to have the old characters back. And I loved how they were like, you don't fuck with the original. I laughed at that because I'm like, yeah. So, because I was like, you can't fucking touch this. But it's, with the original characters, I don't know where we can go from here, to be honest. But that's a different conversation for later, isn't it? So Scream 4, better than 3, but still didn't do it for me.
Did we watch a different film?
I think we just got different tastes. I have taste and you have none, Ross.
Oh, come on, man. Scream 4 is everything. The 11-year break absolutely done it wonders. Campbell and Courtney Cox and David, you can tell they clearly want to be in this movie. Everything in this film works perfectly. I'm not saying it's I probably would place this quite maybe above the second film, which I wouldn't have done a couple of years ago, but I actually rewatched it this week and I'm thinking, yeah, this is just as close. yeah, it's a star down from the first film, but my God, this is a four-star rating.
Jim, what did you think? Were you a fan of this one?
Yeah, I remember when it came out, it was quite divisive. So when I finally got around to seeing it at the cinema, I was absolutely astonished how good and entertaining it was. It was, the old cliche, it was a thrill ride. It was funny, it was scary, it was gory, it had everything I wanted in it. I had gone in expecting it to be a little disappointing. I think at the time I hadn't seen the other films for a good few years, so it's not as if I had those fresh in the mind as well, but just it really surpassed my expectations and then some. The way they kind of toyed with it, kind of being a remake, working along those lines in terms of its references and that sort of thing. And you mentioned the trying to out-meta the meta-ness of the previous films in the opening. There's loads of great little callbacks that tweak and change little bits here and there, just to make you go, oh yeah, that's a bit from that one. But they've put their own little twist on it because they're playing with that remake angle. And even when was it Kirby at the end listing all the ones off, you think, fuck, they really have run out of ideas.
The remake angle, I think, was a bit superficial, a bit like with the second one, because there should have been a Stab remake in the film. I think that would have been better than just there's 7 Stab films now. I'd have liked it if they were rebooting Stab at the same time as rebooting this, just as a background detail. But where they talked about how, it's... And Gail goes, it's mimicking the exact occurrences of the first one, right? You go, is it? So,
yeah.
We have it... Someone dies, right? That's the main thing it's got in common. Someone dies at the beginning, right? With the parents away, but there's now 2, there's not 1. She describes this as a pattern. Someone dies, then the school beauty dies, and then ends in a party. Tatum died at the party. The school beauty in this context is the Fonz, right? It's like the tiny pattern it could possibly have. She gets it wrong, right? And it baffles me, this is the same writer. No one went, hey, by the way, the bit where she describes the plot for the first film, that's not actually the plot of the first film. Small niggle.
You're reading way too much into a slasher film.
Are they going off? Are they going off Stab rather than the book? Because we haven't seen that all the way through, so we don't know.
I, by the way, actually really liked this film, despite my little moan there. I think this is a really good film. I think it was good to bring it back to something small and intimate. I think bringing it back to Woodsboro was a good idea. Having this years later, and now we've got a nice reversal where Sydney's the successful author. It's preempting the true crime explosion, and Gail's the one who's not the successful author any longer. It made Gail vulnerable, which I liked. The cast, you've got Alison Brie, Emma Roberts, Hayden Panettiere, Kristen Bell. You've got some really big names in this, or people who went on to be big names. And then you obviously got with the Culkins. In fact, actually, something I really enjoyed about this is the way that you go, the killers are a Culkin and a Roberts, and the motive revolves around living in the shadow of a more famous relative. Fantastic casting.
There's so much good things about this film. At the beginning, the first 15, 20 minutes, it's basically a fake dream sequence in there, where someone wakes up and it's all a dream, but it's a different fresh angle. It's a movie within a movie within a movie. But I thought that was pretty cool as well. I love the fact that Sydney is not a victim in this movie. She actually fights Ghostface head on. She's not scared as much. She even runs to the house in the first attack with when she thinks Jill and Kirby get attacked. And there's also sadness as well between Courtney Cox and David Arquette's character. That fact that their marriage is stale. He's now a sheriff and she's living in a bit of a rut. And it's the fact that she's using these murders to hopefully get their marriage back on track as well. So I think it's wonderfully well written. And I'm actually shocked that Steph thinks this is, marginally better than the third one, because I think this is fucking wicked.
I can't explain it. I mean, clearly, I know, obviously, so you three, see more into it than what I've got out of it, but it's just the characters didn't do anything for me. And I know, Jimmy and Gail can't be all singing, all dancing all the time. But it felt like, I would imagine, being in a marriage. Well, it clearly is for them, but it's gone tired and they don't actually love each other anymore, and that's how I felt with it.
For me, this was the second most likeable cast of characters, but I will say there's a huge gap between first and second there. The kids in it, they're not necessarily believable, they're not necessarily people you want to hang out with, but I thought they were memorable. You know, they left an impression on me, which I'd say was far more than the new characters in either part 2 or 3. I really liked Jill's motive. In fact, I really liked Jill's performance. One thing I didn't like about this movie is that she didn't win. Frankly, if the film had just gone to credits where she's being carried out, the white fills the screen, I would have enjoyed that a lot more than what we did, because by part 4, and I expect that maybe Sydney was supposed to die in this one. You have a really good setup of them Gail and Dewey knowing who she is, and she's the one that's killed Sydney. That would have been really good.
Yeah, that was pretty neat, and it did seem like possibly Gail could be offed as well in this one. It did seem like anyone could be killed again. But yeah, I imagine it probably was down to studio interference to keep those original big names and faces in the series. It would have been bold for them to get rid of one of the original cast. I think Dewey's the only one who remains unscathed in this one, isn't it? Well, other than getting his head caved in with the bedpan at the end. But you know, he's the for once he comes away pretty much unscathed until that point. I did find Emma Roberts' character a bit of a drag. Really brought some of the scenes down, in my opinion. But with everyone else, I absolutely loved Kirby. It just seemed so cool. The kind of person you just want to chill out and shoot the shit with, really. I was absolutely rooting for her.
I thought her and Charlie's relationship in it, or kind of is pining for her, I quite liked that. And he's got a bit of a sort of soft boy, slight sexual abuser energy about him even before we know he's a killer. But at the same time, I thought they were quite charming. I the kid, the other guy, the one who's in Saw 2, the way that he's going around filming everything, that irritated me. I expect that was so they could say, look, we're acknowledging found footage, which had obviously become a big thing at this time. In fact, we mentioned earlier that they were upping the gore for this one, which I guess is in response to torture films. However, while they do have a pop at Saw 4 early on in the movie, I would have liked to have seen Jigsaw playing a game with someone or putting someone in a torture situation, just something to acknowledge that horror movies had changed. It wasn't all remakes by this point. That was maybe 5 or 6 years prior. But it seemed like they just missed out the biggest, single most significant movement in horror at that time, and that was your torture films.
Oh, I guess it doesn't suit the narrative, though, does it? It doesn't go with their flow.
I think, because like when we see Gail go to that screening in the barn, and she discovers the webcam, so we know that the killer's recording all this. I feel like they should have done something with that more, because obviously they allude to it, towards the end. Oh, we've got all this footage, and and I can't quite remember. They're saying that it's going to be published on the internet before the police come. But what if they did sort of like, we'd seen elements of that uploaded to the internet beforehand, and sort of like they had to try and trap the killer a bit through that, like it was going all online as they did it, or maybe even live streaming it. Without sounding awful, we know some events that have gone on in real life in recent times where murders have been live streamed, because you get nowadays, don't you? Like, it's people playing video games. It's making them. Well, the Scream movies even reference this, don't they? But I mean, I suppose if they'd have done that, could that actually have then do films that have to sort of take some responsibility if someone goes around live streaming bloody killing people? I mean,
well, I think it is more of a critique of your reality TV and social media wannabe superstars, isn't it? Rather than looking at it from the found footage angle with all the recording. I mean, it's the same now. Well, it's even worse now than it was back then. I mean, stuff like Twitter and Instagram were relatively in their infancy when Scream 4 came out, but they've got it absolutely on the nose. I don't think they could have done it any better with its comment on those sort of people, gunning for that kind of fame.
And this is why, for me, each passing year, Scream 4 becomes more relevant. There's this film that came out last year called Spree, and it's about this guy who films. He's an Uber driver, and he picks up people, he kills them live on the internet. And even when I was watching that film, I automatically thought of Scream 4, because Jill's motive altogether in this film is probably the more realistic and the most relevant of the entire franchise, and probably the most scariest as well, because she's not doing it for anything, just for fame. That's all she wants. There's no long lost brother or sister nonsense. All she wants is fame and a lot of fans. And that's probably a really scary motive to have, because when you look at the generation we're in now with TikTok and everything else, we are heading into that direction where one day there is going to be someone who is going to go around killing people live on the internet for the police can get to them.
But as well, she wanted fame to be a victim rather than where it could have gone down the other angle of fame of being a killer. Or rather, the kills, what they act out, because obviously nobody would know who the killer was.
But it's a scary motive to have, though. I mean, you look at Billy and Stu's motives, because of the mother and the father, and the mother went off and all that, there's a bit of silliness towards that, even Scream 2 as well, and let's not talk about Scream 3. But with Jill, there's a lot of realism there, that this could actually happen in real life. And I totally get what David, I totally get what David said earlier as well. If the film ended on that white screen moment with Sydney dead, I would have been very, very happy. I thought that would have been a totally dark ending, and that would have risen the film up into the original level. Because I always felt, even now watching it, the last 15 minutes is like an added-on studio insistence.
Yeah.
Kevin Williamson denies it. He said that the script was originally written with that to be included. But I just wish someone had the balls to say, "Nah, let's end it here. Let's end it where Sydney's dead and she've achieved what she wanted to achieve." And that would have made Scream 4, this is now a modern horror slasher film.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think they should have killed him off, or killed Sydney off, or whatever, because it is stretching it a bit thin now. Although part of me did enjoy it when, Sydney got her own back, just purely because I thought her cousin was a whiny little bitch and he needed a little fucking slap. So I really, I just want to be famous because I'm sick of you stealing our limelight and being the only Prescott worth having, And I think even earlier on when Kirby's like, "Ooh, Sydney looks good. She's not got no scars," and her mum's like, "I was Maureen's sister. I've got scars," and you wonder, obviously, because obviously her sister had been murdered and. And not all that going on with her family, but you wonder if some of that had obviously rubbed off on her daughter. Not obviously, her mum didn't find it in the same way that her daughter did, but I just think, I don't know where they could possibly go with it from here. There's obviously got away, but it would have been good if they had have killed Sydney off. That would have been a pretty, fuck moment, do you know what I mean? That did mean business.
Because what they've done is obviously I go back to snobbery thing again from Scream, where proper slasher fans don't appreciate Scream because of the kiddie element, which I totally do understand and get, even though I disagree with it. Now, if Scream 4 ended, quite likely where David said, at that moment, before we got to the hospital scene, then even those fans might have jumped on board saying, yeah, this has got a fucking pretty downbeat ending. The fact that then it goes then to the kiddie sort of, silly 20 minutes running around an ambulance, running around the hospital, where the only reason Dewey finds out because Courtney Cox makes a stupid little remark about how does he know about the scar, which is an absolutely silly throwaway moment.
I loved that because I liked that. Yeah, the reason I liked that bit, it didn't justify the last 20 minutes, but the reason I liked that was because it's consistent with the idea that Dewey's a slightly shit cop. But she immediately clocks this. Although it brings in a plot hole, right? Because Jill can't have been the one who stabbed her.
Right.
Because Jill was at home when the stabbing happened. It happened in the barn. So that had to be Charlie.
Yeah, but she got picked up, didn't she, by Kirby? Yeah,
but she goes round to the house and they've just seen her, and then they have a weird exchange about her leaving her phone, and then she fucks off to the car. But I was like, at what point Did Charlie say, by the way, stabbed her right in the shoulder? Right in the shoulder. Like, it just seems like a weird thing for her to know. With a bit where she then, like, they're doing the bit from the end of the first one, where just like the first one, they're not making sure that she's dead before they hurt themselves. And, her jumping through the table and stuff like that. It was all quite a nice callback, but that irritated me that she should not have known she was stabbed in the shoulder. But I loved that Gail immediately clocked that.
Did everyone spot the biggest clue? She was the killer right at the beginning. When she was sitting in class and every pupil's mobile phone rang about they found the bodies, in the house, and the only person's phone that didn't ring was hers. If you watch that scene back, it's there in your face. Everyone's in our room's mobiles rang apart from hers, and yep, she's the killer because she probably sent the text.
I like that. Yeah. I did not think of that.
Yeah.
No, it did. It didn't occur to me either. I mean, those could have been on silent for all I know. So.
I believe a lot of fans think there has to be a third killer for the film's kills to work.
Right, explain.
There's websites that'll do this better than me. If people just Google Scream 4 third killer theory, if you look at the inconsistencies with where characters are at different times, it doesn't add up. And the script originally had 3 killers, so it may well be a hangover from that. Because Alison Brie's character, who, by the way, was really funny, I loved a bit where she's slagging off her readers and then goes, tell you what, we can get even more people to read your message after, as if there's some sincerity there. But the bit where she dies, for instance, both of them are accounted for. Both of them already have reasons that were not there.
Never picked that up.
Also, the bit where Sydney's being chased around the house, around is it Kirby's house for in?
Yeah, I think so.
No, the next door neighbours. Remember the girl when it?
Oh, then.
Was it? Yes. There. That cool moment where I'm in the wardrobe, and we all thought he'd be behind Kirby. It was actually in the house across the road, wasn't it?
Oh no, that wasn't the one I was meaning.
Right.
I was
At
meaning,
the end.
it's me the bit where. Yeah, that is Kirby's house because they pick her up.
Oh right, apologise.
Yeah. Oh, I'll come to that kill in a sec.
Yeah.
But with that one, the bit with Kirby's house, where the locations of Charlie and Jill also don't work. Where one of them's downstairs, the other's under the bed, but she's still being chased by someone wearing the Ghostface outfit. It doesn't work. It necessitates a third killer. There's a really good Wikipedia page about this theory. I'd recommend everyone Googles it because it describes it better than I do. But that scene with the closet, I thought that was really good misdirection.
Yes, I agree. I thought it's one of the best set pieces in the entire Scream franchise. Because everyone thought, this Stanley Bain. Because if you actually watch the trailer with Scream 4, it actually plays out that it's actually Stanley Bain Kirby. If you watch the Scream 4 trailer, I want to see that again. I mean, the way they've cut it brilliantly, it seems as if the Ghostface has come out of that wardrobe. So, of course, you've seen the trailer, you're expecting that to happen. And then, of course, when it does happen and she's looking across the window and it's the friends, I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I also love Sydney's reaction. First of all, she's scared, but then she's got to face up to her demons. It's a bit like that Lois Strode moment in H2O, like Ghostface is back. I'm going across that fucking house to sort this out once and for all. It's beautiful. It's brilliant.
Wasn't there in the trailer? I remember watching the trailer back in day. Did it show obviously Courtney Cox taking off the Scream mask, which is obviously when she goes into the Ghostface mask when she goes in the bar?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I remember watching it recently I think I remember when I watched the trailer at the time. I think I got excited over the prospect that Courtney Cox, as Gail, does don the mask. I don't know. I think that would be quite interesting. I don't know how that would all pan out or what her... Maybe it's a motive is she wants to actually write a new book and needs some material, so just becomes Ghostface.
I remember the headlines, oh no, Courtney Cox is the killer. Huge shock. I was thinking, as if they're going to put that in the trailer, Courtney Cox is the killer. Stupid. Absolutely stupid.
I think the other kills were really quite nice. The bit in the car park was very relatable. I imagine all of us have had instances where you're walking through a car park at night, you're like, oh, if someone's going to jump out, they could get me. Same with the home invasion bit around at the Roberts's house. The bit with the Jill's mum dying. Now, I thought that was really sad, partially because she's played with the president from Battlestar Galactica. So I was like, yay! Also, just because she's one of the characters who is, who's experienced a big loss, like Sydney, she's grieving there, and I think her death has a dramatic impact. There's a point about that she's like, oh yeah, I have scars from her death, right? Not literal ones, metaphorical ones. And I liked the way that the film kind of dealt quite respectfully with the character's trauma from this one, whilst also still being a pretty fun slasher film.
I thought she was the killer at one stage, so what do I know?
Yeah, I thought it was a fun little moment, the knife for the letterbox. But it also goes to show you the lengths that Jill would go to get her time in the spotlight as well. She even says at the end she even killed her mum to get to this point. So it just goes to show how off the rails she is.
Yeah, I think if there's any issue that I had with this one, really, or any substantial issue, I didn't really like Gail being out of the narrative from quite an early stage, but at the same time, it was probably also necessary because you don't want to end up in the situation where you have people that can't die in a close quarter situation with someone who's trying to kill them.
Unless they actually kill one of them off, which they should have done.
And then it'd be consistent with Wes Craven's ethos of the fear of a director, because he goes, shit, I didn't expect that to happen.
It's quite strange for someone who, he refused to do any Freddy sequels until, of course, The New Nightmare, that he instantly come back to Scream franchise each and every time. There was no dilemma. He never refused it once. Yeah, he's more than willing to direct parts 2, 3, and 4. So fair play to him. That's why I mentioned in Scream 5. I think that'll be a little bit of freshness to it, especially with the people who are behind it as well, which I think are very creative.
Have you guys got anything else you want to say about Scream 4 before we start wrapping things up?
It's just really about like the phone calls in it where they keep saying, "Oh yeah, you rang, you sent me a text from this phone." It's like, well, no, I didn't. It's harking back to in 3 where they're using different, the voices of the different characters. So that sort of got me goat a bit. I didn't like it; just pissed me off.
I picked up that I like. There's a little thing where everyone's checking the back seat before they get in the car. That was a fun little touch. And I quite liked seeing the police officers. That they had a good rapport going. Anthony Anderson and Adam Brody. They had a fun little double act going. And I liked the little bit of jealousy that Gail had towards Dewey's second in command. I forget her name. I do apologise. Yeah, that was a fun little subplot, and everyone in it was really good as well. Like couldn't fault at all. And the kill as well with the policeman on guard outside Jill's house. That was funny. Like trying to subvert the tropes and so on. Wait, if I'm the one that leaves, but they're trying to copy it, am I going to get killed or will you? And then it turns out that they both do anyway. But the way it unfolds was very funny. It was as funny as it was horrifying.
But stab in the face, like they weren't fucking around on this one when it came to kills.
Yeah, the stabs in it, I guess, were a lot more ferocious in this one. Like the girl next door, I've forgotten her
Trudy,
name.
I think.
When he comes out the wardrobe and he's stabbing her like through the hand and everything, she's putting it up to stop it. And it was just a lot more graphic and detailed in this one, as you say. They've upped the ante with the gore and so on. Yeah, it's just a lot more to it. Even subtle things like that. It was really, really neat little touches.
I thought there was just Kevin Williamson written a beautiful script. We got a lovely little final destination gag. I love the fact that when it came to Kirby's time to die, which I did hate, by the way, and still do now. I love the fact that she took on Ghostface and actually won, because not many people do. I know on the telephone call she answered all the questions right, and I also think they hid the killers very, very well in this film. You know, there's a long time. I never thought it was Jill. I got to be honest there. You know, I thought she was still hiding underneath the bed, and even when Culkin was tied up on the chair, I was still thinking, "Oh, who's the killer? Who's the killer?" So even when he got the knife and stabbed Kirby, that was an unexpected moment as well. So I think it's everything we wanted in a sequel after the depths of hell with Scream 3.
I totally agree. I did not call either of the killers when I first watched this.
They did well. I mean, I don't know why. Looking back now, obviously it's more obvious it's Jill, but yeah, and the motives were believable as well. And I say the only thing that does let this film down is the last 15 minutes. I think, as I said, the hospital scene shouldn't really be added into the film. That's the only thing that stops this from being a masterpiece for me.
Even so, I thought it was still quite entertaining in terms of the way they kill her in the end.
Oh no, and I agree with that, Jim. I agree with that. I think I watch it and I still get enjoyed it, and like the fact the little liners and all that, and it plays towards a typical Scream finale. But I just think if it ended where it should have ended, this would have really risen the film up a notch. We're talking about a very, very dark horror sequel, which would have suited the times, really.
Absolutely. Sometimes less is more.
Yes, exactly. That's the better way to sum it up.
Jim, did you call the killers when you watched it?
No, absolutely not. I was guessing right till the end, and that bit where Kirby does get killed, like that's just like whoa. Yeah, you do not see that coming, and it was we all took a shine to her character, so it was even more upsetting. The fact that she was killed off.
Well, but you, Steph, did you see the killers coming?
No, I don't think I did for any of the movies, to be honest. On first watch, so. No. So it was surprising with Charlie. Definitely didn't see that, because obviously it's all reminiscent of the whole Stephen Casey thing from the first one, isn't it? So, she's just overjoyed to have beat him. We're overjoyed for Kirby, because Kirby's such a cool character. She's beat him, yes! And then trying to save him, especially since them two are sort of hitting it off as well. And no, he's just bloody knife plunging.
I think that was a great bit of misdirection as well, with because throughout the film you can tell he really likes her and he feels like he's being ignored, but eventually when she does start taking a shine to him because they're spending a bit more time together, he ends up fucking killing her anyway. But I did like the little touch where he thinks they're emulating what Billy and Stu did in the first film, and she just stabs him straight through the heart. That was very funny.
I've got a quick question about the first film here. Something bugged me that I didn't bring up earlier, and I'm sure one of you guys will have a really good explanation for this. In the first scene, which Steph is just reminding me of, Drew Barrymore originally says she has no boyfriend, and then goes, it reveals she does have a guy, Steve, what his name is. She goes, he's big and he plays football and he'll kick the shit out of you, right? When I was rewatching it, I thought, oh, she actually does have this guy, because they introduce a guy, even like his guts come out. Why was she lying about being single?
Because she probably was one of the first people to invent Plenty of Fish or something, She was on she was on the prowl. She was keeping her options open.
I mean, women do like a guy with a deep voice, I guess.
Yeah. Hello.
Well, plus, I guess if you've just got some random person ringing you on the phone you don't know, who cares what information you divulge to them?
Okay, let's start wrapping this one up. It's been a good old trip down memory lane, but we normally finish off in a ranking, so let's do our own personal rankings. If you haven't guessed them already from what we said, mine go as follows. In fourth place is Scream 3. I will give Scream 3 2 stars. In third place is Scream 2. I will give Scream 2 3 stars. Ross is going to hate me. I think Scream 2 is not as good as Urban Legend.
What?
No. Now, in second place, Jamie, he obviously still listens to our show. He'll be like, yes.
You're on commission, you are, I'm telling you. Flip it,
yeah, the box set from 88 Films out now. Anyway, so in second place, Scream 4, which I will give 3.5 or 4 stars. Let's say 4 stars. And number 1 is Scream, which is a 5-star film. Jim, what's your rankings?
Surprising no one. Number 3 is at the very bottom with 2 stars.
See, this is a race for second place in this one.
I would say Scream 2 is third with 4 stars. You know, it's a great film. I think it's very good. I'm struggling to come up with a favourite. I think 4 might pip the original.
Oh,
for me.
Fuck!
But again, I would give those 2 4 stars each as well. You know, a star rating is pretty superficial, really. I would give 1, 2, and 4 stars each, but, you know, my favourite, I'll probably say 4.
You know, bloodydisgusting.com just did a column agreeing with that take. So maybe it's going to catch on. Maybe 4 will be the new 1. Steph, what are your rankings?
You don't fuck with the original, Jim.
do you know what I love? Jim has been great all night. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's back on form, but then he says that last thing at the end.
do you know what he says? You know what Jim says? The original's all right. Right.
Oh, but Jim just understates everything. Like earlier we said, did you like Scream 4? He goes, yeah. I kind of not expect that to be best of the franchise.
So I was waiting for this bit, you see.
Jim's going to be saying Friday's pick on Jim night. Right.
As a poker face. Steph, what's your ranking?
Surprising no one. 3 is last for me. 1 star. Third place, Scream 4. 2 stars. Scream 2, second. I'd probably give that 3.5. And Scream, the original, the first place for me, and I'd probably give that 4.5 stars.
And Ross, what are your rankings?
Oh, this is hard. I'm not on.
That's what she said.
I'm not on commission like David, so I can't say, you know, number 4 Scream, a film called Clapboard Jungle, you know. So obviously number 4 Scream 3. This is where it gets harder for me. See, I'm gonna have to put third place. Scream 4. Fourth place Scream 3, 2 stars. Mm-hmm. Third place, it's gonna have to be Scream 4. I'm sorry, but 4 stars. And Scream 2, second place with 4 stars, and Scream 1, masterpiece, 5 stars.
Cool. So we have almost got complete harmony in this group here. So Scream, of course, is more than just a film franchise. It is also a TV show. Don't worry, we're not about to go through all 3 seasons in the movie of that. I just want to know, though, if people had general thoughts. Personally, I reckon slashers, and I appreciate this, not the only slasher with a TV show. I think slashers are really ill-suited to recurring characters. You know, if you're going to be doing a slasher as a TV show, Harper's Island is the way to go. Harper's Island, you kill a member of the cast in every single episode, and it was designed as a standalone season. Whereas, when you have 2 seasons in a movie, and I know there's a reboot season, but when you have 2 seasons in a movie with recurring characters and a ongoing plot, I just don't think it's very scary. Like, you're watching these people for 20 hours. You know none of them are going to be the killer in it. They try and imply one of them's complicit and then just fucking throw that out of a window later on. I might delete that bit because it can be considered a spoiler.
Oops.
Then we have the movie, right? There was never a sense of main characters being in danger because they're the main characters. And you also figure out really quickly who did it because it's the only people who never run into the killer.
I think you stole my thunder, but the worst thing that could happen to the Scream TV show was Harper's Island. Once you release something like that, which if anyone hasn't seen that, you need to get on it straight away. It's such well written, so tight. You're still guessing the killer up and towards the last 25 minutes, most probably of the entire show. There's something quite alright about the Scream TV series. It's really daft in it. You know, the killing's a bit lame. The weird thing for me is that the Scream season 3 reboot. They actually had the original voice back. They actually had the original the mask back. It was a bit more violent. It was a bit more tone of the films. I actually quite liked it, even though it's harshly been mauled by critics and fans. So either I watched it with low expectations and come away thinking that's not that bad. But, you know, if you're going to watch a Scream TV show, then I'd say recommend season 3 because it's actually got Ghostface back in all his power.
So they don't follow on.
No, that's the weird thing. But Scream 1 and Scream 2, if you invest in this TV series 1 and 2, you know, but in a day, because you and I, we talked about this a lot, and me when we were watching it, season 2 ends with this big massive cliffhanger, which is never going to be resolved, which will really piss you off because if you've invested so many episodes with these characters, you want to see how it ends.
In fact, the movie did the same thing, the TV movie, where they also bring a cliffhanger in there too. And it's all building up this lore they've been building up since the very first episode.
Yeah, so we're never going to get to see that. And of course, they rebooted it, which stopped fans from watching. But yeah, it's quite. I'm not saying it's an outstanding, you know, TV show, but it's especially with Scream season 1 and 2 when you got a different ghost face, having with a different ghost mask, you know, so it's a bit unique. Actually, at least in the season 3, they bring back the old imagery, which you know is more in tune of the films. But again, though, there is a TV series called Slasher, which probably is superior to the Scream TV show. So if you're going to waste your life watching anything, I would recommend that show instead.
Does the TV series, the Scream one, reference anything from the movies?
No, pretend it's like a DC universe is set in an alternative world.
Right.
It's strange because it's also not very playful or self-aware. In fact, there's hardly any meta commentary in it whatsoever. The thing that the series is best known for, they ditch.
There's some cool kills in it, though. Yeah. You know, it doesn't have to keep you watching, doesn't it? The mystery and all that. And who's the girl? Is it? I can't remember the name now. She's so annoying in the first episode, but then I come towards the end. She becomes my favorite character, and I can't remember what her name was. Carlson was it? Carlson Young played her. Does it
have like comedy elements like the film does, or?
Yeah, they play a bit more straight. You've got like a Randy clone who knows his movies and all that. You know, yeah, it's just quite. It's a little concept of a mystery to it. You know, bit of a backstory. But I mean, if you watch the films, you're going to watch it, aren't you?
I think the character you're talking about is Audrey Jensen.
Audrey, that's it. Yes,
far the most likable in the.
Because she starts off very annoying, doesn't she? And I think, I hope she gets killed straight away. But by episode 3, I'm thinking, please don't kill her off. She's the best person in there.
Jim, did the show ever interest you? Did you watch any of it at all?
No, I haven't. No, just I struggle to get into a lot of TV shows as it is. I mean, especially American ones, they tend to be a big commitment. Usually, we get 20 odd episodes, an hour long for a season. 99% of the time, if I'm looking for something to watch, I'll watch a film or a TV show. So if I wanted to watch Scream, I'd watch the films.
And of course, on the subject of the films, you can't keep a good killer down. They always come back for more, and Scream is coming back with a 5th one, which I believe is called Scream Legacy. Is that right?
No, just called Scream.
Oh, I thought I have Legacy in my head. Scream.
Just called Scream. They're ripping off the Halloween 2018, so this is going to be Scream 2021.
Oh, can it not be 5 Cream?
No. From what we gathered in the news for HorrorCultFilms, all the official logos and all the leaks are just been simply Scream. So yeah, they copied David Gordon Green's Halloween, which one of the things I don't like anyway. I mean, I think that's like the 3rd Halloween film, which is called Halloween. So we're now going to have 2 films called Scream. It's like they just announced Texas Chainsaw Massacre's new film's going to be called Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's bollocks, isn't it? If you're listening to this and you're reading any news posted by Bat, don't worry, it's going to say 5 Cream.
I tell you what, if I were if I were there, what I would have done is I would just I'd have to have balls and fucking in like a wheelbarrow to do this, right? But you go up to where it says Scream, and then add an S. Well, this is being done by Radio Silence, people who made Ready or Not. And Ready or Not is one of my favourite films of recent years, one of my favourite horrors of recent years. Exceptional stuff, and would have been the best film of 2019 if I hadn't also seen Freaks that year. So I could not think of a better creative team to be doing this one.
I fully agree with you. I think Ready or Not was one of the best horror films of the last 10, 15 years. And from all the rumours we are hearing, and because I've covered this a lot on the news, Kevin Williamson has actually said that this is probably the best script he's ever read concerning a Scream film. And the rumours we are hearing that they've nailed it. They really, really have. So we know nothing about it. I've only seen 2 imageries of Courtney Cox's, Gail running around with a red coat on. That's all I've seen. It's brilliant, the fact that they've kept this such secrecy and a mystery at the moment. I mean, this has already been filmed. It's already been canned. It's already in this can. It could get released next week if it wanted to. And the fact we still haven't even had a trailer or anything, they're really keeping their cards close to their chest.
Do we have a rough release date for it?
January the 14th, 2022.
Okay, so that'll be held up to COVID and stuff.
Yes,
like that,
it's supposed to be out this year, but they've delayed it till January next year.
We'll know how good it is based off Courtney Cox's haircut.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah.
My worry for it, the only thing my worry is that they might go down the route of killing Sydney off in the first 15 minutes, which I think will be a bit of a downer straight off. I understand if they were going to kill her, they should have killed her in Scream 4. But I think we're in this age now of horror films where everything's got to be, big bang set piece, a more better way to kill Sydney off. And I hope not, because we just shed 4 adventures with her, if you could say that. She survived it all, and I just hope they treat her with a bit of more respect than doing that.
I would be the total opposite. If they kill her off in the first 50 minutes, I will be the obnoxious person that stands up and applauds. I'll be as noisy as the audience is Scream too.
You kill her off in a heroic end, kill her off as being a hero towards the end where she saves everyone, but not in the first 20 minutes.
Steph, Jim, you guys excited about the thought of another Scream film?
Absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see what direction it takes this time. I mean, it's going to be over another 10 years since the previous one. It'll be good to see what angle it takes. Will it be self-referential based on more recent horror trends, that sort of thing? So I'm intrigued by it. I mean, I really enjoyed Radio or Not as well. That was all right. I'm keen to see where we go with this.
And Steph, you're excited about it?
Yeah, like I say, 3 and 4 might not have been my cup of tea, but yeah, absolutely. I'm always looking forward to another one, and I like to see the return of, David, Courtney, and Neve Campbell. But I mean, what would be interesting is, we don't know obviously how the plot's going to pan out, but what if Sydney not sacrifices herself, but sort of puts herself in front of whoever's going to get killed? Maybe it's maybe she's had kids by now or something, because we don't know where she's up to with this. So, yeah, I think I'm with you, David. I think if she died early on, as much as I love her being in the films and I love her character in it, I do think one of the original 3 have to go. I don't know how they can stretch that out again.
I've heard some casting rumours about it. When I say rumours, this has been in the press. So there's word that Billy and Stu are coming back in it, right? I really hope that's just misdirection on their part, because Billy's obviously supposed to be dead in it, and frankly, I'd be surprised if Stu was alive either. So I hope that's just them fucking around and not actually part of it.
Yeah, I don't think they should really bring anybody back from the previous films. To my knowledge, everyone snuffed it.
And the other rumour about it is that this one's not going to be very meta.
No, they're going to play it as a straight horror. And surprisingly, Kevin Williamson said, it actually works. He's glad he's not going down, it's not going down the same route as the first 4 films followed. It's a great chance for Scream. We're 2022 now. It's been 11 years since the last one. There's a new generation of fans. And as you said, these guys are quite creative. If they can deliver half what they've done with Ready or Not, they're in for a really good treat with it.
Absolutely. I mean, Ready or Not, really fucking funny, really enjoyable. And also, for all the people who moan that horror films shouldn't be didactic or have political messages, they must hate Ready or Not, because Ready or Not explicitly worked off a metaphor of the ruling classes working off the blood of the working classes, right? There's nothing subtle about it, but it was such a great little anti-establishment horror film. I think Ready or Not, if you haven't seen it, folks, you should. And anyway, folks, another thing that you should see, we will be back at some point in the future. Don't know what films are going to be next, but it'll be something brilliant. We've got potentially another exciting interview coming up, but we won't reveal who that's with right now. We've got potentially other series coming up. We've got a number of different ideas. Heck, there's a new Saw film coming out next month. Maybe we'll all be on board for that one. All I know is that we will be happy to be recording this, and we hope that you'll be happy to listen to this. Anyone got any final thoughts on Scream before we go?
I think if Scream 5 can sort of replicate that feeling we experienced when we watched Drew Barrymore in that opening 15-20 minutes of Scream 1, and like you say, they're playing it straight, if they can recreate that feeling and then continue on from that, I think they'll be onto a winner. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do now with it.
I think that the fact that these guys are massive Scream fans, they wouldn't have taken on the franchise because they, with any disrespect to Wes Craven, Courtney Cox David and Neve Campbell have actually said they would never go back to the franchise because of Wes Craven. Until they read the script, they were blown away by it all. These are good signs. I think there's a lot of thought and a lot of effort going into this movie, and the fact the studio are confident they can wait a year to release it as well, especially in the January, which is not very a scare fest month. You would think Halloween, October to be released. I think the studio are quite confident that they got a hit on their hands here, and I think it'll start 2022 with a bang.
Any final thoughts, Jim?
I just realised that we've, spent a good couple of hours talking about Scream, and we haven't addressed the fact that there's been 4 films with a character called Gail Weathers.
Yeah, no, we have. It's complete. Thank you very much, everybody. See everyone later.
Bye.
Check out HorrorCultFilms.co.uk.